Chapter 731. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the devouring space is shared. Yi Xian's eyes flashed. Only then did he realize that the cloud of providence above his clone's head was red in color. It seemed that he had to leave the heavens prison with his original body, while his avatar remained in the heavens prison. First, I'll spend all my providence and leave behind 10,000. Then my avatar will leave the heavens prison and return safely. Yi Xian planned in his heart. Yi Xian's original body merged with his avatar and left the heavens prison. This time he was going to spend all his providence until he was left with only 10,000. When the Peak Great Emperor saw him coming out, he followed behind him. Yi Xian's original body merged with his avatar, but the providence cloud above his head was still blue. He came to a shop under the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty in Greenfire City and exchanged all his blue providence for heaven and earth treasures, leaving him with only 10,000. Then, he returned to his residence. Devour. At this moment, Yi Xian's original body and avatar were in a merged state, so both of them could improve. I'm still a distance away from becoming a rank 8 Great Emperor, but I'm not afraid of that Peak Great Emperor now. Yi Xian thought to himself and stayed in the house for 3 days. After 3 days, the Peak Great Emperor knocked on his door and said, "Little brother, you can leave now." Yi Xian, who was resting in the house, immediately sat up when he heard the news. He could leave, which meant that the relic key was indeed in the Wind Dragon Slash. Forget it. I shouldn't expect too much. Yi Xian shook his head. He didn't have the strength to go to a relic that even a half-step supreme coveted. Besides, would they let him go? When Yi Xian opened the door, the Peak Great Emperor had already left. Now it was time for Yi Xian to leave. I have 10,000 providence. I'll exchange for a prison release token so that my avatar can leave the heavens prison and return safely. As Yi Xian thought to himself, he immediately went to exchange for a release order and a release document. He was the only one who could use the jail-leaving document that had his face on it. However, the clone was still him, so it didn't matter. Then Yi Xian merged with his body and left Greenfire City. Then, he found a place where no one was around and created a clone. He had the clone head to the exit point. His original body, on the other hand, was heading to the location of the final battle between the Sunflame Holy Dynasty and the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty. Since the devouring space was shared, he wanted to take advantage of the time when his clone returned to the Eastern Continent to get more Great Emperor's will. The final battle will take place in 3 days. The Sunflame Sacred Dynasty has already formed an army of 10,000 people. All of them are high-level great sovereigns. There will even be half-supreme experts. Tisk. Yi Xian had arrived near the location of the final battle. Countless people had set up camp here, waiting for the start of the battle. At the same time, his clone had already left the Heaven Prison and was preparing to cross the Death Desert and return to the Eastern Continent. The Death Desert is just child's play to me now. Yi Xian ordered his clone to enter the Death Desert. However, before that, his original body wanted to go to the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty's territory and break through to rank 8 Great Sovereign. At the same time, he could get some Great Emperor's will for others to break through. However, Song Suijing and Song Saijua did not need it. As long as they had enough cultivation resources, they could break through quickly. After making the decision, Yi Xian used Ground Shrink to enter the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty's territory. The final battle was imminent, so the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty had gathered a large number of troops. Those who dared to find trouble with these troops were usually experts. Yi Xian was very strong now. As long as he did not encounter a half-step supreme, he would be fine. There's 100-men battalion there. Yi Xian suddenly poked his head out and took a look. 100-men battalion would at most have a rank 8 Great Sovereign General. There would not be a rank 9 Great Sovereign Marshal. Even if there were 10 rank 8 Great Sovereigns, they would not be as threatening as a rank 9 Great Sovereign. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to hide. He directly revealed his true form and charged over. Enemy attack. Although Yi Xian was fast, the Great Yuan army immediately recognized the providence above his head. So what if you see me? Yi Xian snorted coldly and charged into the camp. In the next moment, the Great Yuan army's camp was filled with bloodshed. At the same time, the Great Yuan army's camp quickly sent out a signal to ask for reinforcements. Unfortunately, they could not block Yi Xian's sword. In less than 10 seconds, the 100-man battalion was destroyed by Yi Xian. The two great Yuan generals in charge were killed by Yi Xian. Hundreds of Qian Kuan rings and hundreds of enemy providence. Before the enemy's experts arrived, Yi Xian had already escaped. At this moment, the providence above his head had turned green again. He was only one step away from breaking through to rank 8 Great Sovereign. As long as I break through to rank 8 Great Sovereign, no one in the Void God realm will be my match. If I break through to rank 9 Great Sovereign, I might be able to contend with a half-step honorable. Yi Xian was bursting with confidence. With the dual space, various ultimacies and bloodline, he had the strength to challenge those of a higher rank. At this moment he was looking for his next target. As long as he destroyed another camp, he would be able to break through to rank 8 Great Sovereign. Oh, a camp about 3 times the size. There might be a rank 9 Great Sovereign Marshal. Yi Xian found another target, but this time he hesitated. The camp in front of him was 3 times the size of the previous one. There might be a rank 9 Great Sovereign inside. There were differences in strength between rank 9 Great Sovereigns. He did not care about ordinary rank 9 Great Sovereigns, but he was afraid that he would encounter a peak Great Sovereign. Although he was confident that he could deal with a peak Great Sovereign, if he couldn't destroy the camp in half a minute, it might attract the attention of the surrounding experts. After all, this was a decisive battle, and there might be a half-step honorable. Hence he made a plan for himself. 10 seconds he would go there, and after 10 seconds he would retreat. This was the same as an experienced assassin. If the first attack failed, he would immediately retreat. Kill. Yi Xian immediately rushed towards the camp with hundreds of people. Enemy attack. A Deyuan captain discovered Yi Xian, but in the next moment, he was killed by Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not even have time to collect his Qian Kuan ring, and directly killed his way into the camp. Another bloodbath was set off. The war between the two great sage dynasties had left millions of corpses, and blood flowed for thousands of miles. The death toll in the Heavens prison was in the tens of millions every year. Some years it could even reach 100 million. Every great sage dynasty had Supreme Being experts who had passed the Supreme Being tribulation. Void God Realm kings and Void God Realm emperors were nothing more than cannon fodder in the eyes of Supreme Being experts. Chapter 732. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Yi Xian charged into the Deyuan camp. While using the 8 Barren Wind formation to kill the enemies, he held an ordinary high-grade Void God weapon in his hand and harvested the lives of the enemies. Every second, there would be yin and yang rings flying towards him. The entire camp was like a slaughterhouse. It was chaotic. Kid, you're courting death. A loud roar rang out. There was originally a 9th stage Great Emperor and 5 8th stage Great Emperors in the camp. However, before Yi Xian charged in, there was a peak Great Emperor patrolling the area. Peak Great Emperor. Yi Xian's eyes flashed. He did not expect his luck to be so bad. He actually encountered a peak Great Emperor. However, he was not afraid of a peak Great Emperor now. 36 overlapping shadows. 128 layered earth pulse. Yi Xian looked at the Great Yuan Army's marshal who was charging towards him and attacked with all his might. The Sword God Bloodline, the Beast God Bloodline, the 8 Desolation Sword, the Earth Pulse, and Yi Xian could kill a 9th rank Great Emperor with a casual swing of his sword. Unstoppable. The peak Great Emperor's face darkened. This was because his Great Emperor's intent did not have much effect. If he forcefully blocked this attack, he would be severely injured. He quickly dodged and launched a fierce attack on Yi Xian. At the same time, the 9th stage Great Emperor and 5 8th stage Great Emperors in the camp arrived and launched a group attack on Yi Xian. Haha, good one. Yi Xian laughed 3 times. At this moment it had only been 5 seconds since he charged into the Deyuan camp. He estimated that if no one else interfered, he would need at most 5 seconds to deal with that peak Great Emperor. However, there were now 6 extra people. Therefore, he could not deal with that peak Great Emperor first. He had to deal with the other 6 first. 8 Barren Wind formation, go. Each of the 8 Desolate Swords contained the 128 layers of the Great Earth Pulse. Only a 9th order Great Emperor could barely withstand it. However, the other 5 8th stage Great Emperors could not block it. Boom! 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 As Yi Xian fought with the peak Great Emperors, He used the 8 Desolate Sword to kill the 5 rank 8 Great Emperors. At the same time, he controlled their interspatial rings to fly toward him. Under such circumstances, the Peak Great Sovereign and the other Type 9 Great Sovereign could not care less about the storage rings and focused on attacking Yi Xian. But they never expected that Yi Xian would have a devouring system. Ding! Host has broken through. Host is now a rank 8 Great Emperor. The system notification sounded. Yi Xian's serious face couldn't help but reveal a trace of an evil smile. Die! After breaking through, Yi Xian's strength had increased by a large margin, and he directly slashed out at the 9th Order Great Emperor. This slash was at least twice as fast as the previous one, slicing the 9th Order Great Emperor in half. Instant kill. A 9th Order Great Emperor. The Peak Great Emperor was shocked. He couldn't figure out why Yi Xian was so powerful. He immediately turned around and left, because there seemed to be a half-step sovereign who had just broken through nearby. Sovereign White Dragon, save me! The Peak Great Emperor roared, and his voice traveled over 100,000 meters. Sovereign! Yi Xian raised his eyebrows, but in the next moment, he understood that the other party was probably only asking for help from a half-step sovereign. Even if you call your father, it's useless. Yi Xian slashed out. Pung! 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 The Peak Great Emperor turned around to receive the slash, but he could only withstand a few 128 layered earth pulse before he was killed. Now not only could Yi Xian kill a 9th Order Great Emperor, but he could also kill a Peak Great Emperor. Humph! Yi Xian quickly rushed over and took the spatial rings of the Peak Great Emperor and the 9th Order Great Emperor, then quickly burrowed into the ground. The Peak Great Emperor had asked for help from a half-step supreme. With Yi Xian's current realm, he could not fight against a half-step supreme, so he had to retreat. Not long after Yi Xian left, a middle-aged man came over. This person was dressed in white. If Yi Xian was still here, he would definitely recognize this middle-aged man as the Peak Great Emperor who had chased after him back then. Even a Peak Great Emperor has fallen. Who did it? When the middle-aged man landed on the ground, he suddenly felt a familiar aura. In the next moment his eyes flashed. This aura, it's that brat. Sovereign White Dragon's aura suddenly surged. He turned around to look at the frightened Yuan army commanders and shouted, "You guys who saw that brat's face?" The experts of the Great Yuan army had all hidden themselves. However, amongst the people present, there were still a few who saw Yi Xian's face. They hurriedly described him in their own words. "Bastard brat, consider yourself lucky to have run fast." Sovereign White Dragon couldn't help but roar in his heart. After all, Yi Xian had killed his younger brother. Huff huff, what a powerful aura. It must be that Sovereign White Dragon. Yi Xian had already fled far away. Before he left, he felt an aura that was at least several times stronger than a Peak Great Emperor. It scared him so much that his legs were very nimble. However, he didn't know that Sovereign White Dragon was the Peak Great Emperor from White Dragon Mountain that day. He also didn't know that the other party had already broken through. Now that I've broken through to the 8th stage Great Emperor, the De Yuan army should be on guard after this incident. I better go back and wait for the 3 of them for the final battle. Yi Xian thought in his heart and immediately fled back to the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's territory. Before the final battle, there would be many experts from both sides coming to harass them. However, they wouldn't cause too much trouble. After all, the final battle was a battle between tens of thousands of people. The scene was so grand that it could scare Void God Realm kings. During these 3 days, Yi Xian stayed in the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's territory obediently. At the same time, his clone had already passed through the Desert of Death and arrived at the Eastern Continent. At that time he was separated from Wu Shang and the others and was captured by the Desert Bandits. After that, Wu Shang escaped with serious injuries while he was sent to the Heavens Prison. It had been a few months since then. If Wu Shang returned to the Eastern Continent, Yi Chong and the others would be very anxious. Therefore, Yi Xian hurriedly sent his clone back to the Eastern Continent. He quickly returned to the Sword God Pagoda and flew up. "Who's there?" Immediately, a disciple of the Sword God Palace shouted, "Tai Palace Yi Xian." Yi Xian's clone directly reported his name. After hearing this name, the disciple's body trembled. How could he not know Yi Xian? "Are 8 Desolate Princess and 4 Moon Palace Master here?" Yi Xian quickly asked. Yes, yes. The disciple quickly nodded. After hearing that Yi Chong and Jiang Xinyan were still in the Sword God Palace, Yi Xian directly flew to the Eight Desolate Palace. Chapter 733. There had been no news from Yi Xian in the past few months. Wu Shang had also returned to the Sword God's palace through the Desert of Death. Therefore, Yi Xian and Jiang Xinyan were very worried about Yi Xian's safety. Yi Xian was afraid that Yi Chong and Jiang Xinyan had gone out to look for him. Therefore, when he returned, he immediately rushed to the Eight-Wind Palace. Coincidentally, Yi Chong, Jiang Xinyan, Duanmu Yuan, and the others were planning to go to the Sunflame Holy Dynasty to inquire about Yi Xian. Father, Mother, I'm back. Yi Xian hastily rushed in. When the three saw Yi Xian, their bodies trembled. They immediately stood up and exclaimed, Yi Xian! Father, Mother, I'm sorry. We ran into some trouble some time ago, but it's solved now. Is senior brother Wu Shang back? Yi Xian hastily said. Phew. The three heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that Yi Xian was fine. Wu Shang is fine too. We've been looking for you for the past few months, Yi Chong said with relief. Yi Xian also understood that the Sword God's palace had a force in the Sunflame Holy Dynasty, guarded by the peerless Sword God. After he went missing, Wu Shang should have brought the news to him and asked him to help find him. However, there was no need for that now. What about Jiang Tianjin? Yi Xian asked again. He went missing like you. There's no news about him. Jiang Xinyan shook her head. No news. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. That day, Jiang Tianjin had used 3 layers of heaven-burning flames to injure him. After that, he had escaped, causing him to be captured by Lord Zhou and sent to the heavenly prison. Although it was thanks to Jiang Tianjin that he had broken through to the 8th-rank Great Sovereign Realm, he had to take revenge. What happened? Did Jiang Tianjin attack you? Yi Chong frowned. No, father. That day, a group of us joined forces to fight against the desert bandits. In the end, we couldn't win and scattered. I was accidentally caught. Later, a senior passed by and saved me. Yi Xian made up a lie on the spot. I see. After hearing those words, Yi Chong and the others finally understood. In any case, Yi Xian was standing in front of them alive. As for Jiang Tianjin's life or death, they didn't care. By the way, Father, Mother, Uncle Duanmu, I have a few gifts for you. Yi Xian suddenly grinned. What? The 3 of them were astonished. Next, Yi Xian took out 3 high-grade ghost lanterns. Inside were the wills of 3 great emperors that had fallen from the 8th order. This is the Spectre Lantern. It contains the wills of 3 8th order great emperors that I have collected. After you refine it, you can break through to the 8th order great emperor realm. Yi Xian said calmly. What? Yi Chong and the other 2 were stunned. 8th stage great emperor? One had to know that the 3 of them had just broken through not too long ago. Among them, Yi Chong had managed to reach the 2nd order great emperor realm with the help of the 6-yang sword god. But now, Yi Xian suddenly said that he had a way to help them break through to the 8th order great emperor realm. Immediately, they thought of the same person. Jiang Tianjin. That Jiang Tianjin had obtained a 3rd order great emperor's will from the 9 heavens sword god. After refining it, he had broken through to the 3rd order great emperor realm. Although he was weaker than the average 3rd order great emperor realm, he was still stronger than the 3 of them. I'm lucky to have encountered a fortuitous encounter. My current cultivation realm is already at the 7th order great emperor realm. Yi Xian said calmly. This news was like a bomb that exploded in the hearts of the 3 of them. After not seeing each other for a few months, Yi Xian had actually broken through to the 7th order great emperor realm. However, what they didn't know was that the current Yi Xian was only a clone. His main body had already broken through to the 8th order great emperor realm. As long as he merged with his clone would also break through to the 8th order great emperor realm. Of course, Father, if you want to cultivate on your own, I can help you get cultivation resources. Yi Xian continued. He wasn't forcing them to break through to the 8th order great emperor realm. It was just a suggestion. He let the 3 of them make their own choice. Although this is a forced breakthrough, my family is already reunited. I don't have the motivation that I had back then, so I'll choose to refine it. Yi Chong said directly. The 9 heaven sword god is only a 5th order great emperor, but he's always pulling a long face. If we break through, he'll have to beat around the bush when he sees us. Duamu Yun also made her choice. I'll refine it too. If I cultivate on my own, who knows how long it will take for me to break through to the 8th Order Great Emperor realm. Jiang Xinyan said. Hearing that the three of them had unanimously chosen to refine the 8th Order Great Emperor's will, Yi Xian smiled with satisfaction. The 8th Order Great Emperor's will was just the beginning. In the future, he would get the 9th Order Great Emperor's will and nurture everyone to the peak of the Great Emperor realm. Previously, because of the White Dragon Sovereign, Yi Xian only took the Qian Kuan ring and left. When the time for the final battle came, he would definitely collect a large amount of Great Emperor's will and strengthen his family. Immediately, the three of them began to refine the will. Yi Xian stood guard at the side. He was going to wait for the three of them to finish refining before heading to the chaotic astral ocean to check on the situation. While the three of them were refining the will, in the distant heavenly prison, the final battle had finally begun. Woo! Woo! A bugle horn sounded. The Sunfire Army and Great Yuan Army on both sides of the heavenly prison's final battle were ready to set off. The two armies had sent 20,000 men each. In addition, the two great sage dynasties had sent 10,000 men each. They were all at least 6th Order Great Emperors. The scene was extremely grand. At this moment, Yi Xian was already holding the 8 desolate sword tightly, waiting for the leader to appear. Father and mother will be done refining soon. Now I'll go and get some 9th Order Great Emperor's will. In the heavenly prison, Yi Xian's eyes shone brightly. Although his avatar was only a 7th Order Great Emperor, it did not matter. If he broke through to 9th Order Great Emperor, he just needed to merge once and his avatar would break through to 9th Order Great Emperor. What he had to deal with now was the final battle. Everyone, the bugle horn for the final battle has sounded. This time the final battle will be led by the three of us. Suddenly 3 experts flew out. Yi Xian turned his head. Although the three of them had concealed their auras, Yi Xian knew that the three of them should be half-step to sovereign. But he did not know how much they had sealed the Great Emperor's will. Was it half or 10%? So they are the generals under the 3 great leaders. Among them, Fengxiang from Green Fire City is the strongest. I heard that he had sealed 10% of the Great Emperor's will. I wonder which 3 half-step to sovereign the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty will send. Half-step to sovereign will only lead us. Their opponents can only be half-step to sovereign. They will not interfere in the battle between empty gods. It doesn't matter who comes. You can't say that. If our leader wins, it will be a great boost to our morale. Chapter 734. The people below were discussing in hushed voices. This group of people usually moved in groups. If a fight broke out, they would be able to take care of each other. A person like Yi Xian who acted alone was either a powerful expert or someone with an incomplete brain. Woo woo woo. The sound of the bugle horn resounded in the sky again. The final battle would begin when the 3rd horn sounded. Yi Xian held the 8 desolate sword tightly. He wished that his doppelganger was here. That way, his strength would be doubled. Woo woo woo. Finally, the 3rd horn sounded. The people from the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty and the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty trembled. Immediately, they roared and started running. It's finally starting. Yi Xian's eyes flickered. This time, he was going to start a massacre. He quickly used the Earth Shrink ultimacy and burrowed into the ground. It was very dangerous to blend in with the crowd. He had to reach the edge of the battlefield so that he wouldn't be surrounded. Anyway, his goal was the same as the others, to make a killing and leave. Kill. Everyone from the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty and the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty shouted the same word as they charged towards each other. Violent Army go. Whirling Dragon Army go. Violent Thunder Army go. The half-step supreme being in the sky shouted. The Violent Thunder Army was a hidden army formed by the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty. They were all fire attribute great emperors who had comprehended the Raging Flames ultimacy. The Whirling Dragon Army was formed by wind attribute great emperors. As for the Violent Thunder Army, they were naturally lightning attribute great emperors. Among them, the Whirling Dragon Army and the Violent Thunder Army added up to less than 100 people. The Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's army was in formation. They took the lead and immediately set up a defensive layer. The Violent Thunder Army, the Whirling Dragon Army, and the Violent Thunder Army immediately used their ultimacies. Raging Flames ultimacy. Deathstorm. Myriad heavenly thunder. The three ultimacies started to bombard their opponents. The first wave of attacks was to see whose defense would be broken first. So scary. This was Yixian's first time participating in a major battle, and this scene immediately stunned him. This scene was like the end of the world. Even if a half-step supreme being was in the middle of the two armies, they would probably be blasted into nothingness. Half-step supreme being only had their wills sealed within their bodies. They were able to withstand most of the great emperor's wills. Only by becoming a supreme being could one condense the supreme being golden body and be completely immune to the will of the great emperor. Too scary. Yixian shuddered inwardly. At this time, he had already rushed to the periphery of the battlefield of the final battle and was prepared to slaughter in the periphery. At this time, 3 Void God Realm Emperors who had the same idea as him flew over. "Brat, you dare to be alone? You're courting death." The 3 of them launched a coordinated attack on Yixian. "You're the ones who are going to die." Dual space. A light flashed in Yixian's eyes, and the will of an 8th Order Great Emperor fused into the space around him. At the same time, their attacks were blocked by the wind blades and wind walls. Yixian did not even raise his hand. "Die!" "Sila! Sila! Sila!" 3 crisp sounds were heard, and the heads of the 3 flew up. Yixian's luck increased tremendously. What a joke. 3 7th Order Great Emperors dared to find trouble with him. A 8th Order Great Emperor. They were really courting death. 8 Desolate Sword shatter. Yixian immediately shattered the 8 Desolate Sword, and it turned into 8 sharp blades and attacked. He was at the periphery and would not be trapped. Under such circumstances, it was a good choice to use the Death Storm. However, it would be too immoral to kill his own people by accident. He was also a member of the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty, and he had to consider the big picture. In the distance, the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty and the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty's army were still in the midst of exchanging blows. Not only that, but the 3 half-step supreme beings from the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty had also started to exchange blows with the half-step supreme beings from the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty. Although Yixian could not see them clearly, he could feel 6 powerful auras. "I don't care so much. Kill." Yixian controlled the 8 sharp blades and charged towards a group of 6 people. 36 overlapping shadows. 128 layered earth pulse. No one below the half-step supreme being realm could withstand his attacks. He could even kill several people with 1 strike. Coupled with the 8 sharp blades, Yixian's killing speed was unparalleled. There are more people there. Suddenly, his eyes flashed. He saw a group of people attacking from afar, and there was no Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's army around. Good chance death storm. Yixian's eyes flashed, and in the next moment, a death storm was set off. When a great emperor of the 8th Order used profound mysteries, his speed was still much faster than a great emperor of the 7th Order. In an instant, a bloody storm broke out in that area. Countless severed limbs flew out from the sky, and the universe ring flew towards Yixian without exception. At the same time, the large number of interspatial rings attracted the attention of some people. What a joke. You want to snatch Yixian's things? Yixian snorted coldly. He quickly drew his sword and killed those who coveted his interspatial rings. Some of them were from the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty, while others were from the Dayun Sacred Dynasty. Dozens of interspatial rings fell into Yixian's hands. With a thought, Yixian devoured everything inside. Now start collecting the Great Emperor's will. Yixian suddenly remembered this matter. He immediately took out the spirit lantern and started collecting. He's from the spirit sect. Kill him. When the others saw this, they were immediately enraged. I don't need you to tell me what to do. Yixian glared at them. In the next moment, those who were hostile to him were immobilized. 8th Order Great Emperor's will and dual space. Even a peak Great Emperor's movement speed would be reduced by 80%. 80% movement speed was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Die. Yixian did not care which camp they were from. Those who dared to target him would not have a good ending. Hiss. 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 Their necks were sliced by the wind blade. Their heads flew up and their interspatial rings flew to Yixian without exception. Now no one dared to provoke Yixian. They all retreated. Be it the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty or the Deyuan Sacred Dynasty, they all hid far away. Not bad, not bad. My goal this time is to create a Ninth Order Great Emperor. This is not enough. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth slightly curled up. This time he directly charged into the crowd. 36 overlapping shadows. 128 layered earth pulse. 8 barren wind formation. At this moment Yi Xian was like a harvester. Wherever he went there would be a bloodbath. The number of people he had killed had reached hundreds. Chapter 735. Brat, don't be so arrogant. Come and die. A peak great emperor targeted Yi Xian and charged over. You overestimate yourself. Die. Yi Xian casually launched a series of attacks. Within the 36 overlapping shadows, he could already fuse the 128 layers of Earth Pulse 20 times, which was extremely powerful. In addition to the restriction of the dual space, this peak great emperor couldn't dodge in time, and could only forcefully block the attacks. Bang! 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 This peak great emperor's weapon vibrated thousands of times in an instant. Both his arms were shaken to the point that his bones were fractured. Then, he was killed by the remaining force of the 36 overlapping shadows. Humph! Yi Xian swiftly rushed over and took out the highest quality spirit lantern to preserve this peak great emperor's will. Although refining a great emperor's will was weaker than breaking through normally, it was enough. Now Yi Xian's strength had shocked the hundreds of people around him. They all retreated, but Yi Xian wouldn't let any of them go. Every second there were more than 10 corpses falling from the sky. At the same time, more than 10 interspatial rings flew towards Yi Xian like dazzling meteors. At this time Yi Xian's luck had already turned green. It was so dark that it was close to blue. The more he killed, the braver and stronger he became. He kept moving forward and charged towards the direction of the Deyuan army. Death Storm. Yi Xian directly executed a super powerful death storm in the midst of the enemy. Countless wind blades swept up, and another rain of blood fell from the sky. After dealing with this 100-man phalanx, Yi Xian moved on to the second one. Among the people present, other than the 6 half-step supreme experts in the sky, he was the only one who dared to do so. Even a peak great emperor would have to retreat when hundreds of high-level great emperors attacked at the same time. However, Yi Xian's speed was extremely fast. Even if someone managed to hit him, they would be disintegrated by the 128 layers of Earth Pulse that had merged with his 8th-level Great Emperor will. In less than half a minute, Yi Xian had destroyed a few square formations, and more than 1,000 Great Yuan warriors had fallen. When the 6 half-step Supreme Beings saw this, the morale of the 3 Supreme Beings on the Sunflame Dynasty's side soared. So strong. Where did this person come from? He actually comprehended dual space. With him here, the Sunflame Holy Dynasty will definitely win this year's final battle. The City Lord's foresight is indeed not bad. This kid has a huge amount of power. He actually managed to lead this great battle. The eyes of one of the half-supreme being flickered. The City Lord he was thinking of was the City Lord of Bluefire City. The white-haired old man who had met Yi Xian twice and exchanged a twin fruit for the Wind Dragon Slash. The great decisive battle was held every year, but very few people knew that there were huge benefits behind it. The Sunfire Holy Dynasty versus the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty. Whoever won the final battle would be able to obtain a large amount of luck from the opponent and become stronger. Last year and the year before, the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty had won. However, this year was different. In the Great Decisive Battle, both sides had agreed that they could only send out 20,000 Great Yuan soldiers and 3 half-step Supreme Beings. However, this time Yi Xian had appeared, so they did not know who would win in the end. However, at this moment, one of the Supreme Beings in white from the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty glanced over. When he saw Yi Xian's face, his body trembled. It's this kid. This white-clothed Supreme Being was the peak Great Emperor from White Dragon Mountain. He was known as Supreme Being White Dragon. This time he had applied to participate in the Great Decisive Battle. If he could lead the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty to victory, he would definitely be promoted. However, now that he saw the enemy who had killed his brother, he could not sit still anymore. Bastard, I'm going to kill you. Supreme Being White Dragon was furious. He abandoned his opponent and charged toward Yi Xian. What? The other 2 half-step Supreme Beings from the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty, and the 3 half-step Supreme Beings from the Sunfire Holy Dynasty were shocked. They did not expect Supreme Being White Dragon to suddenly charge forward. "You have violated the rules." At that moment, the half-step Supreme Being from Greenfire City immediately shouted, "Supreme Being White Dragon, what are you doing?" One of the half-step Supreme Being from the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty shouted, "We are not allowed to interfere." The other person also shouted. However, Supreme Being White Dragon did not even look back as he charged toward his opponent. Humph! The half-step Supreme Being from Greenfire City immediately mustered up all his strength and charged forward, instantly intercepting Supreme Being White Dragon. "Your Excellency, you are representing the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty. You are not allowed to interfere in the battle between the empty gods. You have violated the rules." The half-step Supreme Being from Greenfire City's eyes flashed as he shouted coldly, "Get out of my way." Supreme Being White Dragon stared at the figure tens of thousands of meters away, and shouted in a low voice. At this moment, the 4 figures in the air had also stopped and approached. "Supreme Being White Dragon, you have violated the rules." The gray-clothed Supreme Being from the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty said coldly. At this moment, Supreme Being White Dragon remembered that he was representing the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty. If he attacked Yixian, it would be equivalent to the Supreme Being battle, and the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty would lose. In this way, the Great Yuan Holy Dynasty would lose a lot of luck. At that time, he would not be able to escape death. "I haven't attacked yet." Supreme Being White Dragon suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said. Everyone was stunned. Indeed, Supreme Being White Dragon had only swept to the side. He had not attacked anyone else, so it was not a violation of the rules. "Alright, let's do it again." The 6 of them instantly started fighting again. However, the commotion over here attracted the attention of quite a few people, including Yixian. "It's him? He has broken through to the half-step Supreme Being level." Yixian recognized the middle-aged man in white. He was the Peak Great Emperor who had chased after him. He did not expect the middle-aged man in white to have broken through. Just now, if the half-step Supreme Being from the Sunflame Holy Dynasty had not stopped him, he would have been forced to fight with the middle-aged man. "Good fellow, he has broken through. Looks like I have to be faster." Yixian's heart trembled and he increased his speed. This time, his goal was to break through to the 9th stage Great Emperor, and then see if he could fight against a half-step Supreme Being. As long as he broke through to the 9th stage Great Emperor, he was confident that he could fight against Supreme Being White Dragon, who had just broken through. Supreme Being White Dragon in the air kept an eye on Yixian as he fought, afraid that Yixian would run away. However, what he did not know was that Yixian would not leave just like that. What he wanted to do was break through. Kill, kill, kill. Yixian was like a god of slaughter, constantly shuttling through the Great Yuan army. Everywhere he passed, there would be a large number of corpses. At the same time, Yixian's realm was also constantly increasing. He estimated that he would break through in another minute. His strength had fiercely shocked everyone, including the few half-step Supreme Beings. Chapter 736. The Sunflame Sacred Dynasty and the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty had sent out 20,000 troops for the final battle. However, at least 2,000 to 3,000 of them had died at the hands of Yixian. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. 30 seconds. Yixian continued to kill at the rate of 10 people per second. Almost all of the people who came to participate in the great battle gave their wealth to others or buried it. No matter how bad it was, they still spent all of their luck, so they didn't have much wealth. Yixian needed to kill a large number of enemies in order to break through. Fortunately, there was no shortage of people in the final battle. Ding! Host has made a breakthrough. Host is now a 9th stage Great Emperor. After Yixian had killed more than 3,000 people, he finally heard a notification. After hearing the notification, Yixian's lips curled up slightly. Although there was only a difference of 1 stage between a 9th stage Great Emperor and a 8th stage Great Emperor, one's strength would skyrocket. He glanced at the 6 people in the air, especially the white figure. He revealed a strange expression. He sized up the situation and realized that both sides were still in a stalemate. Hence he hesitated. A half-step supreme martial artist has sealed the Great Emperor's will in their body. They have a strong physique and can burn their true chi without any damage. Their strength is at least several times stronger than a peak supreme martial artist. I wonder if I can fight Sovereign White Dragon with my current strength. Yixian thought in his heart. In fact, he was not confident in his own strength. After all, this was a challenge that required him to surpass an entire stage. However, Sovereign White Dragon also had an opponent. If he joined in, he could be of help. However, there were so many enemies below. Why should he go there so early? TSK. Let's deal with the enemies below first. Yixian's eyes flickered. After making a breakthrough, his killing speed had at least doubled. Every time he killed, his cultivation would improve a little. If he could kill all the people present, he might be able to break through to the peak supreme martial artist. I don't have any breakthrough items for now. Let's break through to the peak supreme martial artists first. Yixian kept an eye on the 6 half-step supreme martial artists as he killed crazily. Within a minute, Yixian could kill more than 1,000 people. At this moment, the morale of the Da Yuan army had plummeted, and many of them had fled. However, this did not affect Yixian. In terms of speed, Yixian had never been afraid of anyone at the same level. At this moment, his speed was not the slightest bit slower than the White Dragon Sovereign. However, just as Yixian was halfway through his killing spree, he suddenly discovered a unique corpse in one of the interspatial rings. A corpse that shocked him. Devourer Beast. Ding! Host has obtained 1 advancement point. Yixian could advance again. Previously, his Beast God bloodline had leveled up, so all his Beast God bloodline had leveled up once. Now, his agility had leveled up 4 times. However, now that he had fused with another type of Gemini bloodline, a new advancement path had appeared. The first evolution path of the Gemini bloodline was to fuse the original body with the avatar to increase one's strength. Each evolution would increase one's strength by 10%. The second option was to spend 5 advancement points to create another doppelganger. 10% strength is not bad, but my avatar is in the eastern continent, so I can't increase it. Creating another avatar is not bad, but I still lack 4 advancement points, so I won't consider it for the time being. Yixian pondered for a moment and made a decision. Ding! The Beast God bloodline's agility has leveled up. Currently leveled up 5 times. When Yixian added the advancement points to his agility, his speed had increased by another 10%. However, this was the speed of running on the ground, not the speed of flight. Now, his speed was naturally increased by 50%. Let's fight to our heart's content. Yixian roared to the sky and started the massacre again. 100, 1,000, 2,000 corpses fell from the sky one after another. The battlefield of the final battle was filled with blood and countless broken limbs. This was war. When the 6 half-step supreme martial artists saw this scene, some were happy while others were worried. The final battle was actually divided into 2 parts. One was the battle between the empty god realm great emperors, and the other was between the 6 half-step supreme martial artists. The 6 half-step supreme martial artists were representing the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty and the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty, so they could not attack the others. However, the others could interfere in their battle. At this moment, Yixian had already rushed back and shouted, "Can I participate in the battle?" Not good. The half-step supreme martial artists from the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty were shocked. Sovereign White Dragon glanced over and saw that Yixian had already rushed over. Yes. The half-step supreme martial artists from the Green Fire City replied loudly. They could not participate in the low-level battle, but Yixian could interfere in their battle. In the sky, the judges of the 2 Great Yuan Sacred Dynasties were watching. The Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty had lost the battle below. If the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty lost the battle between the half-step supreme martial artists, the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty would lose a lot of luck. After getting the approval, Yixian quickly rushed over. He knew who his opponent was. It was Sovereign White Dragon. You chased after me that day. Today is the day you die. Yixian shouted and attacked Sovereign White Dragon crazily. 36 overlapping shadows. 128 layers of Earth's pulse. Although the physique of a half-step supreme martial artist was much stronger than a peak Great Emperor, Yixian was not only a rank 9 Great Emperor, but he also had various bloodlines. His attack speed was not any slower than a half-step supreme martial artist. Damn it! Sovereign White Dragon cursed in his heart. He had just broken through to the half-step supreme martial artist. Although his opponent was of the same level as him, he had always been at a disadvantage. Now that Yi Xian was involved, he was under a lot of pressure. When the sovereign in green from the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty saw that Yi Xian had joined the battle, he hurriedly shouted, "Little brother, you hold him back. I will be the main attacker." "All right." Yi Xian immediately agreed. He was still aware that he was not a peak great emperor. Compared to the other two, he was still slightly weaker. Therefore, he was in charge of holding them back. Gravitational space. Wind space. Rank 9 Great Emperor intent. Although half a step into the sovereign realm had sealed the will of the Great Emperor into his body, the White Dragon Sovereign had just broken through, so the will of the Great Emperor could only seal his body. Therefore, Yi Xian's dual space still had some effect on him. Under the dual space, Sovereign White Dragon's speed was reduced by 10%. Damn you! Sovereign White Dragon cursed. However, this wasn't the worst part. 8 Baron Wind Formation Go. Yi Xian controlled 8 sharp blades to attack Sovereign White Dragon. These 8 sharp blades all contained 128 layers of Earth's pulse. Ordinary peak Great Emperors could not block them. However, the worst was Yi Xian's attack. Chapter 737. / left behind long and bright shadows, as they continuously attacked Sovereign White Dragon. Even though Sovereign White Dragon burned his true chi and was faster than Yi Xian, he was beaten even more miserably by the Cyan Robe supremacy under Yi Xian's 3 layers of suppression. Occasionally, he would be forced to block Yi Xian's 36 overlapping shadows. Every time his hand would go numb, as if his entire arm wasn't his anymore. Yi Xian and the Cyan Robe supremacy chased and fought as they left the battlefield. Peak Great Emperors, where are the Peak Great Emperors? Come and help! Sovereign White Dragon roared as he ran. There were indeed peak Great Emperors on the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty's side. But after seeing Yi Xian's strength, they had already run far away. Who would dare to help? Seeing that no one came to help, Yi Xian and the Cyan Robe supremacy looked at each other, and their fighting spirit soared. Just now, the Cyan Robe supremacy and Sovereign White Dragon had been fighting for a few minutes, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Both of their true chi had been burned to 1/3. However, with the addition of Yi Xian, Sovereign White Dragon's true chi burned even faster. In less than a minute, his true chi would be exhausted. Sovereign White Dragon knew that he couldn't win, so he turned and ran. Chase! The Cyan Robe supremacy wouldn't let him go. The 3 of them represented the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty in this battle. If they could kill the enemy's half-step supremacy, it would be a great contribution. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to beat a drowning dog. He immediately used the dual space and chased after him. Even if a half-step supremacy could burn their true chi and fly faster, Yi Xian had the dual space to accelerate. Not only could he increase his speed, but the Cyan Robe supremacy also benefited. Moreover, the increase was higher than when used to restrict Sovereign White Dragon. Haha, you're suddenly enlightened. You're dead meat. Yi Xian's eyes widened. The dual space could only reduce Sovereign White Dragon's speed by 10%. However, if the dual space was used to increase Sovereign White Dragon's speed by 20% or 30%. Damn it, damn bastard. Supremacy White Dragon kept cursing. At this time he was also thinking in his heart. He was wondering if he would die. If he would die, he would definitely drag Yi Xian with him. However, he didn't have that chance. Ding! The throbbing pulse of the world has evolved into the throbbing pulse of the world. Ding host! By the time he reacted, he couldn't help but stop. The Azure Robe Sovereign and the White Dragon Sovereign saw that something was wrong with Yi Xian, but in the next moment, they were all shocked. Disintegration profound. Yi Xian fiercely slashed out with his sword. The White Dragon Sovereign had no way to dodge and could only take the sword head-on. The 256 layers of the throbbing pulse of the earth was the disintegration profound meaning. Although Yi Xian had just comprehended it, he could still fuse the disintegration profound meaning 5 times with the 36 overlapping images. Previously, he could already fuse the 128 waves of the earth for 20 times. Now, he could only fuse the 256 waves of the earth for 5 times. Although it seemed like the vibrations were reduced by half, the power was actually several times stronger. Most importantly, the disintegration profound had a disintegration effect. Gotcha! Sovereign White Dragon's high-rank Void God weapon that he had nurtured for several decades suddenly shattered. In the next moment he was sent flying backwards. A large hole had been blasted open in his chest, and blood spurted out. What? Sovereign Green Robe was shocked. Yixian was only a 9th-stage Great Emperor. Yet, he could injure a half-step Great Emperor with a single strike. His attack power was truly terrifying. He wasn't much weaker than Sovereign Green Robe. The disintegration profound. He actually comprehended the disintegration profound. That's the most powerful profound in attack power. Sovereign Green Robe couldn't help but swallow his saliva. However, this wasn't the time to be shocked. He had to kill Sovereign White Dragon first before returning to help. The Sunflame Sacred Dynasty had already lost twice in this heaven prison. They couldn't afford to lose again this time. Immediately, the Cyan Robe Supreme Being rushed over. No! Sovereign White Dragon roared at the sky. A half-step Great Emperor was only a half-step Great Emperor after all. He had only sealed the Great Emperor's will in his body to greatly enhance his physique. It wasn't the real Sovereign Golden Body. At this moment, the Cyan Robe Supremacy approached the heavily injured White Dragon Supremacy. Then with a single slash of his sword, his head was chopped off. At the same time, Yixian also heaved a sigh of relief. Although he didn't kill Sovereign White Dragon with his own hands, he knew that his current strength was probably enough to fight a half-step Great Emperor. Although it was only a half-step Great Emperor, it was still a good sign. Sovereign White Dragon had just broken through, so there probably wasn't much in his ring. Yixian couldn't be bothered to ask for it. Little brother, here's your stuff. At this moment, the Cyan-robed sovereign suddenly threw the White Dragon Sovereign's universe ring to Yixian. Thank you, senior. Yixian hurriedly thanked him. After he caught the ring, his cultivation suddenly increased by a large margin. This ring allowed him to reach the peak of the Great Emperor realm. At the same time, he also heard the system notification again. Indeed, to break through from the peak of the Great Emperor realm to the half-step Great Emperor realm, one needed something called the Supreme Elixir. He had never heard of it before. Let's go back and help. Sovereign Green Robe quickly turned around and rushed back. Yixian also used the dual space to support himself and Sovereign Green Robe as they rushed back. Now the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty had 4 experts, while the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty only had 2 left. This final battle was more or less decided. In fact, one could admit defeat in the final battle. However, only one person from each side was qualified to represent the Sacred Dynasty. The Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's representative was the half-step Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty's representative, while the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty's representative was an old man with white eyebrows. Forget it. We, the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty, admit defeat in this final battle of the 10th Heaven's prison. The old man with white eyebrows had only sealed 10% of the Great Emperor's willpower. The same was true for the half-step Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty's representative. They had no advantage in terms of cultivation realm and were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. If they continued to fight, they would definitely lose. If they continued to fight, they might even die. Hearing this, the half-step Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty's representative nodded and cupped his fist. Thank you for letting me win. The Sunflame Sacred Dynasty had already lost 2 consecutive battles in the 10th Heaven's prison. Today they had finally won back some face. However, at this moment, 2 men in gorgeous clothes suddenly descended from the sky. The few half-step Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty's representatives recognized them. One of them was an official from the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty, while the other was an official from the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty. In this final battle, the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty has won both sides. I hope you can deliver the vital energy on time. The official from the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty cupped his fist and said. Chapter 738. Don't worry, the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty won't go back on our word, said the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty's official coldly. The official from the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty shouted coldly. He didn't look very happy. After all, the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty had won twice in a row. He didn't expect that this time, they would be disturbed by a young man. Immediately after he left, the battle was over. The Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's official was very satisfied. He looked at the 4 people below and said, very good. Even I didn't expect that both sides would win this battle. The 3 of you will be given first-class merit. After he finished speaking, the official's gaze fell onto Yixian as he said, "You're not bad as well. I'll bestow you a baron's order here." Before he could finish speaking, a golden light flashed towards Yixian. Yixian subconsciously caught it and saw that it was a golden command medallion. A baron badge? What's that? Yixian hadn't recovered yet. The Cyan Fire City's Quasi-Supreme explained. With this baron badge, you can go to the imperial capital and become a baron. Although it's only a baron, as long as you keep making contributions, you'll be promoted. At this moment Yixian thought of a word. An official and a noble. Our 10th heaven's prison is the worst of all the heavenly prisons. However, the 3 tycoons of our heavenly prison are all viscounts, said the cyan-robed sovereign. The 3 tycoons of the heavenly prison were Qinghua and the other 2. However, what surprised Yixian was that there wasn't only one heavenly prison. The one he was in was the worst one. Congratulations, little brother. The 3 quasi-supremes thanked him. If it hadn't been for Yixian, the outcome of this battle would have been uncertain. Yixian put away the baron badge in his hand and cupped his fists. Seniors, may I ask what a supreme pill is? The 3 didn't know why Yixian would ask such a question in such a situation. They glanced at each other and the cyan-robed sovereign answered. A supreme pill is something that quasi-supremes need. If you have a supreme pill, the success rate of sealing your body with great emperor intent will increase greatly. I see. Yixian nodded. He had more or less guessed it. However, after killing so many people and leading this great battle, he didn't get a single supreme pill. Little brother, if you go to the imperial capital to be conferred the title of baron, you will receive 1 supreme pill every year. As long as you have 1 supreme pill, you will definitely be able to break through to the half-step supreme realm within a year. The half-step supreme realm expert from Cyan Fire City said. Only 1. Yixian was filled with disdain. He could only receive 1 baronet every year. How stingy. At this moment he suddenly remembered something. He hurriedly cupped his fists and said, Seniors, I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. After he finished speaking, he left. The half-supremes of Blue Fire City looked at his back and praised him in their hearts. They were all half-step supremes, but compared to Yixian they were too weak. After all, when they were in their early 20s they were only Void God Realm Great Emperors. The great battle had ended, so there was no need for Yixian to continue staying here. He hurriedly went to Blue Fire City and exchanged all of his providence. At the same time he exchanged for a release order. A day later, he left the 10th Heaven prison. My original body has broken through to the peak Great Emperor realm, but without merging my clone's realm and ultimacy will not be updated. I should return to the Eastern continent first, Yixian thought to himself. Although the Supreme Pill was very important, and it was the key to breaking through to the half-step Supreme Realm, he still remembered Hermit Xian Zhongshan's kindness. Now that he had comprehended the disintegration ultimacy, he could help Hermit Xian Zhongshan. Master is unfathomable. He actually needs the disintegration ultimacy. I'm afraid his strength is not as simple as an ordinary Great Emperor realm. He might be a half-step Supreme Realm expert. Now Yixian began to doubt Hermit Xian Zhongshan's strength. If Hermit Xian Zhongshan was really a half-step Supreme Realm expert, he might also have a Supreme Pill. At that time he would be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, before he went to the chaotic astral ocean, Yixian returned to the Eastern continent first. When he passed through the Death Desert and the Great Wilderness and returned to the Sword God Palace in the Eastern continent, Yichong, Jiang Xinyan, and Duan Muyuan had already refined the Great Emperor's will and became rank 8 Great Emperors. Coincidentally, Yixian's original body had also returned to the Sword God Palace. When Yichong and the other 2 saw Yixian's original body, they were almost scared to death. Yichong and Jiang Xinyan wondered if they had remembered wrongly. Yixian wasn't just one person but a pair of twins? When Yixian's original body saw the strange expressions of the 3, he stood together with his clone and explained, Father, Mother, this is also me. This is my clone, a puppet. A puppet? Xianer, don't lie to me. How can a puppet have a body of flesh and blood? How can it be exactly the same as you? Yichong asked in horror. Jiang Xinyan and Duan Muyun nodded. Yixian didn't want to explain anymore, and merged with his clone. In the next moment, his clone's cultivation level soared to peak Great Emperor, And even the collapse profound was at the same level. When they saw that there was only one Yixian left after the two of them merged, the three of them started to believe it. Father, mother, just treat me as a twin. I'm going to the chaotic astral ocean to bring your two daughters-in-law back, Yixian said. In fact, Yichong already knew that Yixian had a fiancé, but he hadn't seen them before. Now that Yixian reminded him, there was actually another one. Two Yixian, two daughters-in-law. This was easier to accept than two Yixian and one daughter-in-law. Okay. Hurry up and bring them back. Jiang Xinyan didn't care so much anymore. At that moment, Yixian directly left. However, before that, he still left behind 3 ghost lanterns. All of them contained the will of the great emperor of the Ninth Order. As for his original body and clone, they had already merged and headed to the chaotic astral ocean. In less than half a day, he arrived at the chaotic astral ocean, then used his clone to pick up Song Suijing and the others. He also made a trip to the Skywater continent to pick up Lin Wenyue and the others. As for his original body, he went to the Mystic Mountain. His current strength was very strong, so it was better for his original body and clone to separate to avoid dying in one go. Very soon, his original body arrived at the Mystic Mountain. The Mystic Mountain was still the same as before. Many pirates came to comprehend the gravity profound. Yixian was filled with emotions. He directly flew above these people's heads slowly. Occasionally, he still had to show off to satisfy his vanity. Damn, the Mystic Mountain is so heavy. I even have a hard time walking, but that person is flying in the sky. It's said that once one comprehends the gravity profound, they won't be affected by the gravity of the Mystic Mountain. He must have comprehended the gravity profound. Chapter 739. The group of people below were discussing softly. As for Yixian, he flew into the mysterious mountain range under their strange gazes. Who's there? Yixian had just entered Mtxian when he heard a shout. Yixian recognized the voice. It was He Yan's voice. His heart skipped a beat. As he was a peak great emperor, he had concealed his aura. However, He Yan still managed to discover him. He Yan was indeed not a peak empty God Realm king and probably not an empty God Realm great emperor. Half step to sovereign. This was Yixian's guess. Senior brother He, it's me. I'm back. Yixian replied. In the next moment he saw a familiar figure flying over. It was He Yan. Junior brother Yi? He Yan was a little shocked. He had been waiting in Mtxian when he suddenly felt an aura. Hence he flew out. He did not expect it to be Yixian. Senior brother He, I knew you weren't an ordinary person, Yixian said jokingly. He Yan smiled and said, Junior brother Yi, you're not an ordinary person either. You've broken through to peak great emperor in such a short time. You're back today. Could it be? That's right. I've comprehended the disintegration ultimacy. I'm back to repay master's kindness. Yixian nodded. What? He Yan was shocked when he heard it. Yixian had indeed comprehended the disintegration ultimacy. When Yixian left Mtxian Zhongshan Island, Mtxian Zhongshan had taken in a few more disciples. These disciples had good aptitudes. The earlier one comprehended the ultimacy, the better. The later it was, the harder it would be to comprehend it. If one could receive guidance when one was in the empty God realm, it would be easier for one to comprehend the ultimacy. However, it seemed that there was no need for that now. Come, junior brother Yi, give me a slash. He Yan said excitedly. Senior brother He, this? Yixian was shocked. Looking at He Yan's posture, it seemed like He Yan wanted to receive his disintegration ultimacy. One had to know that even Sovereign White Dragon could not receive his current attack. However, he reacted in the next moment. He Yan was just testing. He Yan did not necessarily need to use 36 overlapping shadows. Senior brother, be careful. Yixian didn't use any martial arts as he slashed out an extremely ordinary sword chi towards He Yan. This sword chi was extremely slow. He Yan directly punched out. In an instant, waves of chi surged. Bang! 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 The two forces collided, instantly shook Yixian's attack. Junior brother Yi. With me. Calm. Junior brother Yixian shadow. Calm. 128. 128. Was. Yixian also understood that this was what Mountain Master Xianzhong wanted. At that moment he immediately followed after him. He Yin brought Yixian to the bamboo forest and shouted, "Master Junior Brother Yi is back." Before he could finish, the door to the wooden house opened and Hermit Xianzhongshan walked out. "Yixian, you really comprehended the disintegration ultimacy?" Hermit Xianzhongshan asked in shock. Although there was a silent array formation in the bamboo forest, he still heard the movement just now. "Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. Master, I have comprehended it." Yixian nodded solemnly. Good. Hermit Xianzhongshan said good 3 times in a row. He was even more excited than He Yan. However, to be on the safe side, he still tried it himself. After 256 muffled sounds, Hermit Xianzhongshan laughed loudly. "It is indeed the disintegration ultimacy. Yixian, you really did it. I am very gratified." "Master, how can I help?" Yixian asked. "I want you to use the disintegration ultimacy to destroy a door." Hermit Xianzhongshan flew up and said, "There is no time to lose. We will leave immediately. If we succeed, I will give you 100 supreme pills." Okay. Yixian's eyes flashed. In fact, he did not need 100 supreme pills. He only needed 1 to break through to the half-step supreme realm. Of course, he could directly devour the remaining 99 pills to raise his cultivation. Hermit Xianzhongshan immediately led Yixian and He Yan away from Xianzhongshan Island. Yixian followed behind him and asked, "Master, where are we going?" "To the eastern continent, the desert of death." Hermit Xianzhongshan explained. "What?" Yixian was shocked. He had just come from the desert of death. He did not expect that the door that even Hermit Xianzhongshan, a half-step supreme, could not break was in the desert of death. Yixian did not ask further and continued to follow. Soon, they entered the desert of death from the chaotic astral ocean. Then, under Hermit Xianzhongshan's lead, they entered the desert of death. The Death Desert was a dangerous place for low-level empty God realm emperors. However, among the 3 of them, Yixian, who was the weakest, was a peak great emperor. How could there be a problem? They used their great emperor willpower to push the quicksand away and continued to dive. After a while, they came to a mysterious place. There was an array here that prevented the quicksand from seeping in. Yixian looked around and asked in shock, "Master, where is this?" He Yan replied, "This is an ancient relic. It is the tomb of a general of a sacred dynasty that was overthrown by the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty." General's tomb? Yixian raised his eyebrows. He also knew that this general was different from the one in the 10th Heaven Prison. The general in the Heaven Prison was at most a rank 8 great emperor. However, the thing in the general's tomb was something that even a half-step supreme would want. At this moment, Hermit Xianzhongshan led the 2 of them deeper and finally saw a simple bronze door. On the door, there were 2 people wearing armor and holding long swords. They looked mighty and extraordinary. On the other side of the door, there were 4 holes that seemed to be keyholes. This is the door. Even I can't move this door. Yixian, try and see if you can break it with your disintegration profound. Hermit Xianzhongshan said as he pointed at the door. Okay. Yixian nodded. Then, he took out the 8 desolate sword and slashed at the door. Boom! 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 The slashes hit the door and the defensive array on it. In an instant it shook more than 200 times. Yixian's attack could even injure Supremacy White Dragon. However, it had no effect on the door. No effect. Yixian, try again. Hermit Xianzhongshan refused to give up. Yixian attacked again without hesitation. 36 overlapping shadows. 256 layered earth pulse. Chapter 740. As time passed, Yixian became more and more proficient. He could fuse 7, 8, 9, and even 10 times of the 36 overlapping images. However, he still couldn't break the array guarding the door. Sai, forget it. I heard that this general of the ancient sacred dynasty likes arrays and mechanisms. It's within my expectations that he can't break it. Xianzhongshan sighed helplessly. Master, it seems that we can only wait for the 4 keys to open it, right? Yan asked. Xianzhongshan nodded. The 4 keys are in the 4 families of the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty. However, one of the keys was lost a long time ago, so it can't be opened. Hearing this, Yixian suddenly raised his eyebrows. Lost? Could it be 1,000 years ago? You know? That's right. The last key was stolen by the Wind Thunder Great Emperor. Xian Zhongshan nodded and looked at Yixian. Speaking of which, the Wind Thunder Great Emperor is also a senior of the Sword God Palace. You should know, right? Yixian was stunned. He remembered that he didn't tell Xian Zhongshan about this. However, it was strange that Xian Zhongshan knew that he was from the Sword God Palace. Don't be surprised. I'm good friends with the Tai Sword God. Xian Zhongshan answered. This answer shocked Yixian. Xian Zhongshan was good friends with the Tai Sword God? What a coincidence. Yixian was Xian Zhongshan's disciple in name. He later joined the Tai Palace and could be considered a disciple of the Tai Sword God. He didn't expect the two masters to be good friends. It was no wonder that Xian Zhongshan knew that he had joined the Sword God Palace. Since you can't open it, forget it. Xian Zhongshan sighed again and took out a small pouch from his interspatial ring. He threw it to Yixian. Although you can't open it, you should need supreme pills now. There are 10 supreme pills here. Take them. Yixian's eyes lit up. This master wasn't bad. Although he didn't help, he still benefited. 1 supreme pill was enough for him to break through. 10 supreme pills were enough for him to improve his cultivation. Junior brother, with these 10 supreme pills, it won't be a problem for you to break through to the half-step supreme realm in a month, He Yan said with a smile. A month? Yixian sneered. As long as he wanted to, he could break through on the spot. However, he still held back and did not break through for the time being. When Sovereign White Dragon was still a peak Great Emperor, he had already failed to break through several times. It took him a full year to break through to half-step supreme. If he had a supreme pill at that time, the time would have been shortened to 2 or 3 months. However, cultivation aptitude was nothing to Yixian. With the devouring system, he didn't need to cultivate normally. If he had been born as the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's crown prince, he might have been a supremacy by now. Humans were born unequal. Time was unfair to begin with. Then Xian Zhongshan brought Yixian and He Yin out of the general's tomb. However, when they arrived on land, they suddenly felt waves of powerful auras. There's an expert. Hermit Xianzhong growled as his expression immediately turned solemn. He turned his head and discovered a few people flying towards them at high speed. They were at least half-step supreme sovereigns. Only half-step supreme sovereigns could make Zhongshan Xianyi so cautious. However, when Mountain Man Xianzhong saw the appearance of the person who had come, his serious expression immediately relaxed. He knew the person who had come. Not only did he know them, but so did Yixian. Qinghua, why are you here? Zhongshan Xianyi asked in surprise. Qinghua, this name was widely spread in the 10th Heaven prison because he was one of the 3 overlords there. Yixian had heard of him before. However, what shocked Yixian even more was that he actually recognized the old man in the lead. This old man was the one who had used a twin life fruit to exchange for his wind dragon slash. He was one of the 3 overlords in the 10th Heaven prison, the master of Greenfire City. Zhongshan Xian, why are you here? Qinghua was surprised. He turned to Yixian and said, Little brother, we meet again. It was normal to see Zhongshan Xianyi here, but it was strange to see Yixian. You know each other? Zhongshan Xianyi was surprised. Greetings, senior. Yixian greeted him. At this moment, Yixian had already sorted out his thoughts. It was no wonder that a peak great emperor could only be a subordinate. The white-haired old man was the master of Greenfire City, one of the 3 overlords in the 10th Heaven prison. Haha, I understand now. Zhongshan Xian, you want to try the disintegration ultimacy to see if it can open the gate of the general's tomb? Qinghua understood immediately. That's right. Unfortunately, even the disintegration ultimacy can't open the gate of General Wolffang's formation. Zhongshan Xianyi nodded. Qinghua smiled and said, It doesn't matter. The 4th key has appeared. What? Is that true? Zhongshan Xianyi was shocked. That's right. It's all thanks to this little brother. Qinghua smiled and nodded. Then he looked at Yixian. Then, he explained the whole sequence of events to her. Zhongshan Xianyi felt that he had done something unnecessary. The 4th key had been hidden in the wind dragon slash. Yi Xian had known about this secret long ago. Otherwise, Qinghua wouldn't have let him go. He would have asked for the Thunder Rush Sword. However, he didn't need the Thunder Rush Sword now. Now that the fourth key has appeared, when are we going to inform the other three clans? Zhongshan Xianyi asked. I've already informed them. They know about it and will come soon to open the general's tomb with me. Qinghua nodded. Do you still remember our agreement? Zhongshan Xianyi asked again. Qinghua smiled and said, Of course not. The three clans are powerful. We have to work together. This time I came early to inform the two of you. Good. Since that's the case, I'll make an extra trip and call Tai over. Zhongshan Xianyi said. Yi Xian was shocked when he heard the name Tai. Master Tai? Could it be Sword God Tai? Yi Xian asked subconsciously. That's right. I told you before that Tai and I are good friends. The three of us once roamed the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty together. Zhongshan Xianyi nodded and said, It seems that you don't know that Tai is a half-step supreme. Not to mention you, even his son probably doesn't know. That guy is still the same as before. Indeed, Yi Xian didn't expect Tai Palace's Sword God Tai to be a half-step supreme. He didn't even tell his son Wushang. He was too low-key. Chapter 741. As long as Tai is here, we won't lose to any of the three major clans. This time I will personally make the trip. After Mountain Master Xianzhong finished speaking, he turned his head to look at Yi Xian. You can be considered to have made a great contribution to finding the fourth key this time. If you can break through to half-step sovereign before the three great families arrive, you can enter as well. Thank you, Master. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. As long as he wanted to, he could instantly break through to half-step Supreme Master. What was so difficult about that? To be honest, he was very curious about the general's tomb. After all, there would definitely be fortuitous encounters inside. Although it was dangerous, the more dangerous it was, the more fortuitous encounters there would be. Anyway, he still had a clone in the Eastern continent. If his original body died, his clone would be his original body. That's right. The three major clans will definitely not bring fewer people than us. It doesn't matter if there are a few more. Qinghua nodded. Immediately, Mountain Master Xian Zhongshan left for the Sword God Palace. In fact, Yi Xian's clone was also leading people to the Sword God Palace. However, due to some reason, he did not return to the Sword God Palace for the time being. He was afraid of bumping into Mountain Master Xian Zhongshan. Now that the wilderness was accessible, Mountain Master Xian Zhongshan quickly arrived at the Sword God Palace and told his old friend, Tai Sword God, about the matter. Tai Sword God had been in seclusion for many years. This time he finally came out of seclusion and followed Mountain Master Xian Zhongshan. At the same time, Yi Xian also found a quiet place to put on a show. Ding! The host has broken through. The current level of the Great Emperors will seal is 5%. The realm had finally broken through again. Yi Xian consumed a supreme elixir and reached half-step Supreme Master. He could clearly feel that his physique had undergone a tremendous change. His strength was at least 5 times stronger than when he was a peak Great Emperor. If the White Dragon Sovereign was still alive, he would have been able to kill him in an instant with that strike. The Great Emperors will seal the body and greatly increase the physique. Compared to this, the ultimacy is really child's play. Yi Xian thought to himself. After breaking through, those ultimacies were actually not very useful. Only a few of them were still useful, such as dual space, collapse ultimacy, wind acceleration, earth shrink, and so on. All in all, he was much stronger than a half-supreme being of the same level. A few days later, Mountain Master Xianzhong also returned with a white-haired elder. This person was the Palace Master of Tai Palace, Tai Sword God. Tai, long time no see. Qinghua also hurriedly greeted him. I didn't expect things to be so coincidental. Yi Xian sighed when Sword God Tai arrived. Then he looked at Yi Xian. When he sensed Yi Xian's aura, he was also shocked. Half-step supremacy. He is indeed a genius. Hermit Xianzhong's eyes lit up. He had only been gone for a few days, but Yi Xian had already broken through from peak Great Emperor to half-step supreme. This speed was enough to shock everyone. Even though he had given Yi Xian 10 supreme sovereign elixirs, even an ordinary peak Great Emperor wouldn't be able to refine them as quickly as Yi Xian. Normally, it would take several months for them to refine one supreme sovereign elixir. However, No one knew how many Supreme Sovereign Elixirs Yixian had consumed to break through to Half-Step Supreme. However, it didn't matter because there were more important matters at hand. If he is given another 1 or 2 years, he will definitely surpass us, Sword God Tai commented. This evaluation was already very high. However, Yixian sneered in his heart. He felt that it wouldn't take that long. The 5 of us are at the same level. If we join forces, we can be compared to one of the 3 major families. Qinghua suddenly frowned and said, however, our 4th key originally belonged to the Yang family. Back then, their key was stolen by the Wind Thunder Great Emperor. As a result, the exploration of the ruins was pushed back 1,000 years. Are you afraid that the Li family also knows about this? Mountain Master Xianzhong asked. That's right. If the Li family also knows, then we will become one of the 5 major powers. Qinghua nodded and said, I don't think so. The 3 major families aren't that stupid. What good will it do them to have another major power? A middle-aged man behind Qinghua said. He was Chou Yuanjia, another big shot in the 10th Heavenly Prison. That's not necessarily true. The Yang family has a good relationship with the Li family. Perhaps they will inform the Li family, Qinghua said. His name was Hong Wenming, and he was also one of the 3 big shots in the 10th Heavenly Prison. If that's the case, then there's nothing we can do. After all, we are outsiders. However, the 4th key is with us. Moreover, the 3 of us have official titles. They can't do anything to us. Qinghua nodded. Hermit Xianzhong added, although we don't know which general this tomb belongs to, there should be a quasi-supreme divine weapon and quasi-supreme martial arts inside. When the time comes, if we fight, they won't care whether you have an official title or not. If that's the case, then we can only split up and not team up with them. Otherwise, we may be attacked by a group, Sword God Tai said. Everyone nodded silently. Next, they waited for 2 days. After 2 days, they saw a large group of people rushing over. Damn it, it's really the 4 major families. Qinghua cursed in a low voice. The group that came was the 4 major families that had the 4 keys 1,000 years ago. They were the Tuoba family, Shangguan family, Li family, and Yang family. Qinghua, you guys are early. A middle-aged man was the first to land. Tuoba family head. Why is the Li family? Qinghua asked in a low voice. There's no other way. The Yang family brought the news to the Li family, so we can only rely on the 5 major powers. Tuoba family head shook his head. Soon, the experts of the other 3 major families also landed. The 4 major families were originally in the same big city. However, after 1,000 years, all the major families had moved away. Therefore, they were no longer related to each other except for the Yang family and the Li family. Qinghua quickly glanced around. There weren't many people from the 4 major families, only 24 people in total. There were 6 people from each side. However, all of them were half-step supremes. Among them, only the 6 people from the Shangguan family were all wearing black cloaks and face veils. It was unknown who was who. However, when one of the people from the Shangjia family saw Yixian, his body slightly trembled. His eyes flickered under the cloak. At this time, the other 3 family heads also flew over. Qinghua, the 4th key was stolen by the Wind Thunder Emperor Lord from our Li family. Therefore, our Li family is also qualified to take it, Li family head said. Since you're already here, you can't drive away even if you want to. Fine, we'll just go with the 5 major powers, Qinghua said indifferently. After all, the Li family and the Yang family were on the same side. If he drove away the Li family, what about the Yang family's key? Chapter 742. Since that's the case, let's discuss the distribution. The Tuoba family head said. If we stay together, we'll split it equally. If we're separated, we'll depend on our strength. The Yang family head said. Everyone could accept this distribution because they didn't plan to stay together. They wanted to act independently. Alright, let's go down. The 5 forces reached a consensus and went down to the entrance of the general's tomb. There were some strange words on the door of the general's tomb, but the people present were prepared. They did not open the door but started to read. This general's tomb seems to belong to the ancient Saint Dynasty's Wolf-Fang general. An old man from the Tuoba family said. Wolf-Fang general. These 4 words fell into everyone's ears. Some people were familiar with them, while others were hearing them for the first time. It's indeed the Wolfang General. It said that the Wolfang General is proficient in formations and mechanisms. He has 3,000 Wolfang cavalrymen under him, and each of them is comparable to a half-step supreme. Someone exclaimed. 3,000 Wolfang cavalrymen, 3,000 half-step supreme. Everyone was shocked. They seemed to be in luck. Even if the 3,000 Wolfang cavalrymen are strong, how could they still be alive after so many years? Someone doubted. However, in the next moment, the Tuoba family elder who had deciphered the words on the door coldly snorted and said, "This Wolfang general is proficient in mechanisms and formations. These 3,000 Wolfang cavalry are all puppets. I suspect that these 3,000 puppets are in the general's tomb." What? Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. 3,000 Wolfang cavalrymen are all puppets? That means that the puppets wouldn't die under normal circumstances. If someone got their hands on them, they would have 3,000 half-steps supreme. It's said that the Wolfang general controls the 3,000 Wolfang cavalrymen with a general's seal. Therefore, there might be a general's seal in the general's tomb. The old man from the Tuoba family continued. General's seal. Everyone engraved this name in their hearts. All right, let's open the door first. The young family head said. Everyone nodded. Qinghua also silently took out a simple and unadorned brass key. The other three patriarchs did the same. They walked over together and inserted the brass key into the keyhole. Rumble. When the last key was inserted into the keyhole, the door trembled violently for a moment before slowly opening. The entrance to the general's tomb was open. The five forces had yet to enter, so they had to wait until the door was completely opened. Boom! The simple and unadorned door finally came to a stop, and the things inside were reflected in everyone's eyes. The number of people present, including Yixian and Hiyan, was exactly 31. Their realms were the weakest among those present. What entered Yixian's eyes was a long passageway that was about 10 meters wide. The walls and floor were made of special jade that looked smooth and shiny. Charging Grand Dao. There were 4 words on the stone wall at the entrance. No one moved because this was no ordinary place. This was the tomb of a general of the ancient Saint dynasty. There doesn't seem to be any danger. I'll go take a look first. An expert from the Li family volunteered. The head of the Li family wanted to stop him, but the other party had already rushed into the passage. He ran carefully for 100 meters, but he didn't see any danger. Haha, it's fine. Everyone come. The expert from the Li family laughed. But in the next moment, his smile came to an abrupt halt, as if a specially made arrow had suddenly pierced into his head. A headshot. Li Xiang. The people from the Li family immediately shouted. With his head pierced, the expert from the Li family immediately fell to the ground. Blood flowed out, and he died with his eyes wide open. I saw it. That arrow was shot out from the wall. Someone in the group exclaimed. Not only him but even Yixian saw it. When the expert from the Li family stopped, a small hole suddenly appeared in the wall, and then an arrow was shot out. We can't stop. We definitely can't stop. We have to go all the way. Someone shouted out his guess. That was what everyone thought in their hearts, but no one dared to try again. That arrow wasn't very fast. It shouldn't be a problem as long as we are careful. Suddenly a burly man walked out. He was from the Yang family. I specialize in defensive martial arts. Let me try. The burly man walked to the side of the passageway. The head of the Yang family and the others were against it. After all, the burly man was from the Yang family. No, let's get a few more people to go together. The head of the Yang family suggested. The burly man was from the Yang family. The other families could not sit back and take advantage of the situation. I have the metal attribute. Let me do it. A person from the Tuoba family also walked out. Everyone present was a half-step supreme being with a strong physique. That arrow was able to pierce through the head of a half-step supreme being, so it was obviously not that easy to deal with. If a few people were to form a team, they would be able to take care of each other. As the Li family had lost an expert just now, the Li family would pass by this time. At this time, the 3 families had already sent out 3 people. Only Qinghua's side was left. Let me do it. I have a fire clone. Hong Wanming, one of the 3 giants of the 10th Heaven prison, said. When everyone heard this, they were slightly stunned. They sighed inwardly. That expert from the Li family had died so miserably. Why did he have to try it himself when he had a fire clone? Let's let the fire clone go first, someone suggested. Hong Wenming did not say anything. He opened up his territory and condensed a fire clone at the entrance. His fire clone stepped into the passageway, and then ran quickly. Poof! An arrow pierced through the flame avatar, causing it to dissipate instantly. However, everyone was able to see some clues. We can't stop in this passageway. I'm afraid we can't go too fast either. Let me try with a few more fire clones. As soon as Hong Wenming finished speaking, he condensed 6 fire clones and entered the passageway in a row. Among the 6 fire clones, the first one was the fastest, the second one was the second, and the 6th one was the slowest. Poof! 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 Arrows were shot out from the walls. As the arrows would close after they were shot, no one knew when they would reappear. Hence no one could attack them. Fortunately, only 5 of the 6 fire clones were destroyed this time. The last one maintained its speed and rushed to the end. That's right. This is the speed. As long as we maintain this speed, we can pass through the passageway safely. Everyone was overjoyed. It seemed that they had passed through the path of charge. Soon the fire clone reached the end of the tunnel, completely unscathed. Let's go. Chapter 743. The 5 factions had been right to be cautious. After all, this Wolf Fong general was proficient in formations and mechanisms. If they had rashly entered, they would have suffered heavy casualties or even been wiped out. Damn, one died before we even entered the general's tomb. Yixian silently swallowed his saliva. He reckoned that the general's tomb was also restricted by formations that prevented length contraction from being used. At this moment, the black-cloaked Yang family had all entered. They maintained the speed of their fire avatars and quickly passed through the passage. Soon, only Yixian's group of 7 remained. Yixian Hiyan, this general's tomb is extremely dangerous. Even we might die. Do you want to follow? Hermit Xian Zhongshan asked. Hiyan was his personal disciple, and Yixian was also his in-name disciple. Both of them had good aptitudes, and he did not wish to see the 2 of them die here. Yixian and Hiyan glanced at each other before solemnly nodding. If that's the case, then I won't say much. You guys follow behind me, Hermit Xian Zhongshan said. Following which, their group of 7 passed through the charging avenue with Qing, Hua leading the way and Tai Sword God at the bottom. However, when they passed through the charging avenue, they discovered that the other 4 families had disappeared. How is that possible? They just turned the corner, Hiyan said in shock. After that long charging avenue, there was a corner. At this moment, there was only one path for the 7 of them to take. Although they might have left first, the Tuoba family in front of them had arrived less than a second before them. There's no movement. Seems like there's something here. Everyone be careful. Do not spread out, Hermit Xian Zhongshan warned. However, his warning was useless, because Qing Hua, who was leading the way, suddenly turned his head and discovered that Yixian's group of 6 had disappeared. How is this possible? Qing Hua was shocked. A second ago, he had heard the footsteps of the 6, but now all of them had disappeared. Even he did not know how Yixian's group of 6 had disappeared. At this moment, in a certain area of the general's tomb, F***CK, where is he? Yixian could not help but exclaim. As he walked, Hiyan and Mountain Man Xianzhong, who were walking in front of him, suddenly disappeared as though they had teleported. When he turned around, Sword God Tai was gone as well. Now he was all alone in this passage. Could it be an illusion array? Yixian closed his eyes and felt for a moment. He still had the supersonic bat bloodline in his body. Although the range of his senses was only 1,000 meters, he could not sense anything at the moment. There was only the pale wall. It seemed that General Zhong had used some strange method to separate them, such as teleportation. Forget it, one person it is. Yixian calmed down. In any case, he was now a half-step supreme master with half of the great emperor's will sealed within his body. In addition to his various bloodlines, his strength was no weaker than 10 or 15% supreme master. First he tried ground shrink and as expected he couldn't break through the floor. Only ground walking could increase his speed slightly. Behind us is the charging path. There is only one way to go, and I can only go straight. The Bahuang sword in Yixian's hand suddenly shattered, and then it quickly moved around him. A half-step Supreme Master could burn his vital energy, and the Bahuang wind-killing array's speed increased by several times. Anyway, he had the Divine Tree of Life bloodline, and burning his vital energy was free, so he could use it as he pleased. Yixian moved very carefully. He did not have a fire clone, so he could only exchange for some true Mystic Realm puppets from the Devouring system to explore the way. At the end of this passage there was a fork in the road. He first tried one but unexpectedly he walked back from the other. F***ck, there is no other way? Yixian cursed and was shocked. It was fine that he disappeared, but why did he not even have a way? Was he going to be trapped to death? No, there was still one way to go, and that was the charging path. Yixian hurriedly returned to the end of the charging path. Looking from afar, he found that there was no ancient door at the end of the charging path. This meant that this great path of charge was not the same as the previous one. At this moment, Yixian suddenly saw a figure appear at the end of the charging path. This was a beast wearing armor, and on the back of this beast there was a person wearing armor. However, this person and the beast were connected, and the armored person was wearing the same armor as the beast. Seeing this, a name suddenly flashed across Yixian's mind. Wolfang Cavalry. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, this Wolfang Cavalry began to charge, and the huge saber in his hand was raised high above his head. In the blink of an eye, he swept in front of Yixian and slashed down fiercely. Swish! The huge saber slashed down, but Yixian's afterimage was destroyed. 36 overlapping images. 256 layers of the throbbing earth. This slash directly hit the Wolfang Cavalry, and in the next moment, this Wolfang Cavalry was torn into pieces, and the armor scattered on the ground. 256 layers of the throbbing earth was the profound meaning of disintegration, and at the same time it also had a disintegration effect. Yixian's current slash was probably something that even an expert who had sealed 10% of the Great Emperor's will would not be able to block, let alone this Wolfang Cavalry. This armor is good stuff, keep it first. Yixian walked over. The Wolfang Cavalry was made up of pieces of dark gray armor, and inside there was a vacuum. However, when Yixian walked over, he realized that these pieces of armor could not be kept in the devouring space. At the same time, the piece of armor in his hand started to vibrate. What? Yixian hurriedly threw away the piece of armor in his hand. In the next moment, these pieces of armor were like magnets, and suddenly reassembled into a Wolfang Cavalry. F***ck. Yixian jumped in fright, and with another slash, the Wolfang Cavalry disintegrated again. The Wolfang Cavalry's armor could not be kept, and would automatically reassemble. Its defense was strong, and although its individual strength was not strong, these characteristics were enough to cause trouble for others. Yixian waited for a while, and when he realized that the Wolfang Cavalry was reassembling, he slashed again and scattered it. If I can't keep the armor, I can't even keep the weapons. Looks like I have to get the general's seal. Yixian thought to himself and then began to explore. He did not know what dangers this charge avenue would have, so he was very careful. However, this time his prediction failed. This avenue was very ordinary, and there was no danger at all. After Yixian walked on this avenue, he saw a stone tablet with 3 lines of names on it. Calm Heart Lake. Smelting Building. Training Grounds. Behind this stone tablet, there were 3 large doors, each with the 3 names on the stone tablet. Does this lead directly to these 3 places? Yixian was a little confused. The smelting building should be a place to forge weapons, mechanisms, and puppets. Needless to say, the training ground was a place used to train soldiers. Chapter 744. Wait, this is the general's tomb. There shouldn't be any soldiers here. Only puppets and the Wolfang Cavalry. The smelting building could be a trap, and the training ground could have a large number of Wolfang Cavalry. Which one should I go to? Yixian thought as he looked around. He didn't see any other passageways. He couldn't even leave the general's tomb, so he had to choose one. Calm Heart Lake is unknown. Eliminated. The smelting building is probably a trap. It's too dangerous for me. Eliminated. I'll go with the training ground. Yixian made his decision. Then, he pushed open the door of the training ground and walked in. A mystic realm? Yixian finally understood why he was separated from the others. The general's tomb was a mystic realm, and they had all gone through different entrances to different mystic realms. This door was also the entrance to a mystic realm. Let me see what's in this training ground. When Yixian entered the training ground, the door behind him slammed shut. The training ground was a huge arena, but there were many spectator stands and seats around it. Yixian looked around and realized that it was similar to the Colosseum in Rome. There wasn't a single person in the training ground, nor were there any puppets or anything like that. There was only a stone tablet. There were a few lines of words on it. When Yixian saw it, he was shocked. Wolfang Cavalry Challenge? Yixian raised an eyebrow. In the Wolfang Cavalry Challenge, one Wolfang Cavalry rider would appear at the start. After defeating him, 2 Wolfang Cavalry riders would appear at the same time, and so on. From the 5th to the 10th stage there would be rewards. At the same time, the rewards were very generous. The reward for the 5th stage was 100 supreme pills. The reward for the 10th stage was a quasi-supreme divine weapon. Only those who passed the 5th stage could leave the training ground. Otherwise, they would die of old age here. It starts with 1 Wolfang Cavalry rider and so on. If you want to leave the training ground, you have to fight from 1 to 50. Isn't this 2F** King Cruel? Yixian was shocked. He had seen the strength of the Wolfang mount. If the White Dragon Sovereign had seen the Wolfang mount, he would not have been able to defeat them in a short period of time. To defeat 50 Wolfang cavalrymen in a single battle was not a simple matter. After all, it would take a long time for him to recover his burned true energy. The interval between 2 battles cannot exceed 10 minutes. Otherwise, the calculation will be recalculated. This was the rule of the troop training field. In this place, one needed both strength and recovery ability. If someone was unable to control the consumption of their true chi and ran out of recovery items, then they would really die of old age here. Out of the 30 or so people, I'm the only one who chose the training ground. That shouldn't be possible. This place should be an independent secret realm. At the same time, there are countless such training grounds. Yixian thought to himself as he stepped into the ring. In the next moment, he heard a deep voice. "Young man, do you accept the challenge?" Yixian was startled and immediately reacted. This should be the voice of the Wolfang general. At his level, he could also preserve his voice for thousands of years. This was nothing. However, a conscious voice was a remnant thought. Yixian could not do it at the moment. Yes. Yixian nodded. Good. Next, a large door beside the ring opened and a Wolfang mount walked out. This Wolfang mount was exactly the same as the one Yixian had seen before. It was a combination of human armor and wolf armor. It held a large blade and was full of killing intent. Kacha! 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 After this Wolfang mount appeared, it immediately charged towards Yixian. 36 overlapping images. 256 layered earth pulse. Pung! 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 This Wolfang mount was instantly disintegrated and Yixian obtained his first victory. Next, this Wolfang mount reformed. However, this time it did not attack Yixian. Instead, it quietly waited. "Young man, you have 10 minutes to rest." The deep voice sounded again. People who had cultivated to Yixian's level were not stupid. They all knew that even if they only used 1 strike of qi, they had to recover. After all, stamina was the most important thing in this training ground. However, this was not necessary for Yixian. With the sacred tree of life, he had already recovered all his qi. Even the energy he used to wield his sword had recovered. There's no need. Begin. Yixian gripped the Bahuang sword tightly and said coldly. The Wolfang general's remnant thought did not say much. In the next moment, another Wolfang mount walked out from behind the door. Now it was the second round, 2 against 1. It is impossible to fly in the general's tomb. If you want to pass, you have to quickly defeat these Wolfang mounts. Yixian immediately attacked and disintegrated 2 Wolfang mounts, obtaining victory. Again. He did not waste time and continued to challenge. 3 for 9 10. Even if 10 Wolfang mounts attacked together, Yixian could still defeat them in an instant. 10 rounds were 1 round. Yixian had already passed 1 round. After 4 more rounds, he would be able to obtain the reward for the 5th round and leave the training ground. However, Yixian's goal was not the 5th round but the 10th round. The Bahuang sword was not bad. Although it had been nurtured for a few decades, a quasi-supreme divine weapon was of a higher level than a void divine weapon. If Yixian could obtain it, his battle strength would increase significantly. Not only that, the 9th round also had a quasi-supreme divine weapon. This was something he needed very much. In short, he would challenge as many rounds as he could. Pung! 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 Continue! 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 Yixian's voice was loud and powerful. In less than 5 minutes, he went from 1 round to 49. Now it was the 50th round. 1 against 50. If it was anyone else, it would be very difficult. After going from 1 round to 50, their true qi would be depleted. Yixian thought to himself. At this moment, another Wolfang mount walked out from the door. 50 just right. Come on. The Bahuang sword in Yixian's hand shattered again. Against these Wolfang mounts, using the Bahuang wind formation was the best method. Boom! As soon as Yixian finished his words, the 50 Wolfang mounts immediately charged. One could not fly in the general's tomb. Even if one jumped, they could only jump a few meters high. If an ordinary person accidentally fell into the charging wave of 50 Wolfang mounts, they would definitely be hacked to death. Yixian held a high-grade void god weapon in his hand and suddenly attacked the Wolfang cavalry that was charging over. In the next moment, a wave of sword shadows attacked the Wolfang cavalry. Double space. 36 overlapping shadows. 256 layers of earth pulse. Chapter 745. Yixian gave it his all. While controlling the 8 sharp blades to attack the Wolfang cavalry, he also used the dual space and 36 overlapping shadows to create a hole in the Wolfang cavalry, while he stood still in the same spot. By the time the 50 Wolfang cavalry arrived in front of Yixian, only 20 or so of them remained. At this moment, Yixian took a step forward and killed his way in. In less than 3 seconds, the 20 over Wolfang cavalrymen were all disintegrated. Young man, you have passed the 5th stage. You are rewarded with 100 supreme pills. Just as the Wolfang general finished his sentence, a yin and yang ring fell from the sky. There were 100 supreme pills in it. At the same time, the 50 Wolfang cavalry regrouped and looked at Yixian quietly. 100 supreme pills should be enough for me to break through. Yixian quickly went over and picked up the yin and yang ring. Ding! Host has broken through. The current Emperor's intent seal is 10% complete. The system notified. Indeed, 100 supreme pills allowed him to break through once. The Emperor's intent seal could greatly increase one's physique. Even if a peak great Emperor used heaven incinerating flames in front of him, he wouldn't be hurt even if he didn't defend himself. My speed has increased by at least 30%. If I wanted to pass the 10th stage just now, it would have been a little difficult. But now it's a piece of cake. Yixian's eyes lit up. The 10th stage of the troop training grounds was to face 100 Wolfang cavalry at the same time. It wasn't something an ordinary person could pass. However, his attacks could kill the Wolfang cavalry instantly and his speed was several times faster than them. With his strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to kill 100 Wolfang cavalry easily. Young man, do you want to continue or leave? If you continue, you will have to challenge again if you fail, and the reward will not be refreshed. The deep voice sounded again. Hearing that, Yixian replied without hesitation. Continue. The 5th stage was 100 supreme pills, the 6th stage was 500 supreme pills, and the 7th stage was 1,000 supreme pills. This should be 1,500 supreme pills, which should be enough for Yixian to break through again. 1,500 supreme pills. If it was given to others, they could only break through 2 or 3 times. However, Yixian had more experience than others, so it was estimated that he could only break through once. 51. 52. 53. Xian, who had broken through, was now even more proficient in killing. Every time he slashed out, he would be able to kill 2 or 3 Wolfang cavalry. He wouldn't spend more than 3 seconds in a battle. Young man, congratulations on passing the 6th stage. This is your reward. Another universe ring fell from the sky. Yixian hurriedly went over and swallowed the 500 supreme pills inside. Although his realm hadn't increased, his cultivation had improved by a lot. 1 minute later. Young man, congratulations on passing the 7th stage. This is your reward. Another interspatial ring fell to the ground. 15%. Once he got through it, he could cultivate the sovereign golden body and become a true sovereign. Haha, the current me can easily pass through 10 stages. Yixian couldn't help but laugh. Continue. 71. 72. 73. Yixian killed his way up. Although his realm didn't increase, his strength kept getting stronger. Congratulations, young man. You've passed the 8th stage. This is your reward. Another interspatial ring fell. The reward for the 8th stage wasn't a supreme pill, but a map. A map of the general's tomb. After Yixian got the map, he quickly copied it into the engulfment system. Calm Heart Lake, Smelt Building, Training Grounds, and the general's palace. Yixian looked at it. The most valuable thing in the general's tomb should be the general's seal. After all, it was the key to controlling the 3,000 Wolf-Fang cavalry soldiers. Continue. Yixian shouted. 81. 82. 83. Soon Yixian passed the 9th stage. Young man, congratulations on passing the 9th stage. You can choose a quasi-supreme martial technique. When the Wolf-Fang general finished speaking, a list appeared in front of Yixian. It was filled with the names of the martial techniques. My 36 overlapping shadows and disintegration esoteric skill are comparable to a quasi-supreme martial technique. My speed isn't bad either. Yixian was a little hesitant. After thinking for a while, he finally made up his mind. The Nether Dragon Ghostly Force. I choose this one. Yixian shouted. The Nether Dragon Ghostly Force wasn't an offensive martial technique. However, it could increase his strength just like lifting heavy as light and lifting light as heavy. The Nether Dragon Ghostly Force first burned one's vital energy, then turned into the Nether Dragon Ghostly Force to increase one's strength. If Yixian ran on the ground, the Nether Dragon Ghostly Force would have the same effect. That was why Yixian chose it. It could increase one's attack power and speed. It was a good choice. Pa. After Yixian answered, a secret manual suddenly fell to the ground. Yixian quickly picked it up and copied it into the Devouring system. Ding! The host has learned the Nether Dragon Ghostly Force. It was good to have the Devouring system. Others might need a year or two to learn the martial technique, but Yixian only needed a second to learn it. Now Yixian had passed the 9th stage. There was only 1 stage left. Continue. Yixian shouted. In the next moment, another Wolf-Fang cavalry walked out from another passage. There were 91 of them. Yixian had just learned a quasi-supreme martial technique and wanted to try it out. Nether Dragon Ghostly Force. 36 overlapping shadows. Pulse of the Earth 256 layers. He held the Bahuang sword and slashed out. Pung! 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 The Wolf-Fang cavalry that had just started charging were instantly split into dozens of pieces. Originally, Yixian's attack could only split 3 to 4 pieces at most. Now there were more than 10 pieces. Although he was using the Bahuang sword and not an ordinary high-grade Void God weapon, its power shouldn't be so strong. Yixian estimated that he could only split 8 pieces at most. After using the Nether Dragon Ghostly Force, the power doubled. Xiao! 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 Sword lights flashed one after another. Before the 90 or so Wolf-Fang cavalry could even reach Yixian, they were beaten into a mess and completely disintegrated. Not only that, some of the Wolf-Fang cavalry's armor cracked under Yixian's attacks. The Wolf-Fang cavalry's armor was very tough. It was specially refined by the Wolf-Fang general. Yixian had fought 90 battles before, and didn't even break a single piece of armor. Now he could crack the armor with a single attack. Chapter 746. Continue. Yixian's confidence suddenly exploded. 92, 93, 94. Very quickly, Yixian defeated 99 Wolf-Fang cavalry at the same time. These Wolf-Fang cavalry were also in a sorry state. Some parts of them were shattered by Yixian and could not be reassembled. These Wolf-Fang cavalry are quite strong. Although it's a pity to destroy them, there are less than 100 of them here. Yixian thought to himself. His goal was also the general's seal. He estimated that he already had the strength to compete with the other factions for the general's seal. Young man, the last challenge is not easy. Do you want to continue? The Wolf-Fang general's voice sounded again. Yixian raised an eyebrow. Not easy. What was the difference between 99 Wolfang cavalry and 100 Wolfang cavalry? I think the last Wolfang cavalry is not an ordinary puppet. Yixian immediately understood and nodded. Continue. Crack. In the next moment, the sound of footsteps came from the pitch-black tunnel in front of him. As expected, these are not ordinary Wolfang cavalry. These are human footsteps. Yixian frowned slightly and looked ahead. Not long after, a man with a long saber and dark gray armor walked out. This is Deputy Longblade. He can fight 100 alone. The Wolfang general's voice sounded. No matter what it is, come. Yixian held the Bahuang sword in his hand. In this situation, the Bahuang wind formation would not be of much use. The Wolfang cavalry were no threat to Yixian anyway. On the other hand, this Deputy Longblade was not a human. It was just a puppet. It had no aura at all, which made Yixian feel quite wary. Boom! Deputy Long Saber shook the saber in his hand. Instantly, the 99 Wolfang cavalry charged forward. Humph! I'll deal with you trash first. Yixian coldly snorted as he dealt with the 99 Wolfang cavalry in front of him. In the previous battle, he fought 1 against 99 and defeated all of them before they could even charge over. But this time it would not be so simple. Nether Dragon Ghost Force. 36 Overlapping Shadows. Throbbing Pulse of the World 256 Layered Waves. Yixian continued his frenzied attacks. Rows after rows of Wolfang cavalry were struck and disintegrated. However, some of the attacks were blocked by the Longblade Deputy General who suddenly rushed to the front. Could that weapon be a quasi-supreme spirit treasure? Yixian widened his eyes, but he didn't have time to think, because this long saber Deputy General suddenly sped up. What? By the time Yixian reacted, his opponent had already raised his long saber above his head and slashed down. Hiss! With a crisp sound, Yixian's right shoulder was chopped off. Fortunately, he reacted in time. Otherwise, his head would have been split in half. Bahuang sword break. Yixian hurriedly activated his Zhen Qi, splitting the Bahuang sword apart and attacking the saber Deputy General. His right arm and right shoulder were chopped off, but this was not important. What was important was that the saber Deputy General was right in front of him. If he didn't take this seriously, he would pay the price in blood. Clang! 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 8 sharp blades clashed with the saber Deputy General's armor, producing a violent metallic clang. At the same time, Yixian retreated at full speed. The saber Deputy General did not intend to chase after Yixian. Instead, he slashed at the 8 blades. Crack! One of the blades was split in half by the saber Deputy General. F***CK. Yixian's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. The Bahuang sword he had used for so long was actually destroyed by the saber Deputy General. What would he use in the future? Bahuang sword go. Yixian no longer controlled the remaining 7 blades to attack the saber Deputy General. Instead, he attacked the remaining Wolfang cavalry. Pung! 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 The saber Deputy General turned around and charged at Yixian. Yixian's face darkened. He glanced and realized that the sacred tree of life had not finished healing him. His right arm had only grown to his elbow. He quickly took out an upper virtual god weapon and charged into the Wolfang cavalry. The saber Deputy General suddenly sped up and caught him off guard. If it was a one-on-one battle, Yixian could still dodge his attack. However, this was not a one-on-one battle. If he did not take care of the Wolfang cavalry first and was surrounded, the consequences would be unimaginable. Moreover, he could use the Wolfang cavalry to temporarily block the saber Deputy General. Very quickly, Yixian's right hand recovered to its original state. He took out another high-grade Void Divine weapon, and used both of them to madly defeat the Wolfang cavalry. 50, 40, 30. Yixian had only charged into the army of the Wolfang cavalry for less than 2 seconds, but there were less than 20 Wolfang cavalry left. At the same time, Yixian was targeted by the saber Deputy General again. Let's fight! Yixian shouted with the Bahuang sword in his hand. Although one part of the Bahuang sword was cut in half, it could still be reassembled. The difference in attack power between an upper virtual god weapon and the Bahuang sword was as high as 50%. This was the effect of nurturing. Nether Dragon Ghost Force. 36 overlapping shadows. 256 layers of Earth Pulse. Yi Xian was also attacking with all his might. Although the dual space did not have much effect on the saber Deputy General, it was better than nothing. Whoosh whoosh. The saber in the saber Deputy General's hand was a quasi-supreme divine weapon. Therefore Yi Xian dared not fight him head-on. Repulsive acceleration, wind acceleration, wings of the wind, ground walking, 5 agility advancements and windbreaker. These factors made Yi Xian slightly faster than the saber Deputy General. Otherwise, Yi Xian would have been killed by the saber Deputy General. Boom! 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 Yi Xian counterattacked while dodging the saber Deputy General's attacks. However, the saber Deputy General's reaction was too fast. Moreover, the quasi-supreme divine weapon in his hand could split his attacks in half. Therefore, if Yi Xian wanted to win, he had to catch him off guard. At this moment Yi Xian was regretting it. He had 5 divine bloodlines in his body. The last one was the Gemini bloodline. With the Gemini bloodline, as long as he merged with his clone, his combat power would increase by 10%. However, if Yi Xian had a clone right now, he would definitely be able to easily kill this Deputy General. Unfortunately, his clone was still in the Eastern continent. If I want to win, I have to bleed. I have to fight. Yi Xian gritted his teeth and suddenly dashed over. This time he wanted to exchange blood for blood. Swish! The saber Deputy General raised his saber and chopped off Yi Xian's left shoulder. At the same time, Yi Xian's right hand slashed out with his sword. Boom! 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 The saber Deputy General was struck and was sent flying. Yi Xian had prepared himself for this battle for a long time. After all, if he was not careful, he would be cut in half. Chapter 747. Fortunately, the Deputy General's armor wasn't a quasi-supreme divine weapon. Yi Xian's sword strike still caused cracks to appear on it. It's effective. Yi Xian's eyes flickered. Although he couldn't finish off the Deputy General in one go, he could do it a few more times. However, he couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Otherwise, his head would be chopped in half. Gulp! Yi Xian swallowed his saliva and waited for the Tree of Life to heal his left arm. The Deputy General was just a puppet after all. He didn't have any consciousness. This was good news. Taking advantage of the fact that the Deputy General was sent flying, Yi Xian quickly finished off the remaining Wolfang cavalry. Kill! The Deputy General charged over again. Yi Xian also went up to meet him. Rip! Yi Xian's newly grown left arm was chopped off again. At the same time, he slashed at the Deputy General. Gotcha! The cracks on the Deputy General's abdomen armor widened. One more strike and it would shatter. Gotcha! 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 The sound of metal shattering echoed. Yi Xian used several arms as bait and finally destroyed the Deputy General's abdomen. As long as he could hold on a little longer, the Deputy General would be chopped in half by Yi Xian. At that time, the Deputy General without legs would be nothing to be afraid of. Hiss! 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 Yi Xian's arms were chopped off again and again. He was in so much pain that he couldn't help but cry out. If not for the Tree of Life's blood, he would have been chopped off even if he was a tentacle monster. Die for me. After being chopped off 15 times, Yi Xian slashed with all his strength. Gotcha! With a crisp sound, the Deputy General's abdomen finally shattered. The upper half of his body fell down. However, in the process of falling down, he slashed down fiercely. Swish! Yi Xian only saw a cold flash. Then he felt a chill in his throat. Blood spurted out crazily from his throat. Gulp gulp. Yi Xian hurriedly covered his throat with one hand. He used his zhenqi to block the blood and pressed his head with the other. That slash had almost cut off his entire head. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and pressed down on his head, allowing the bloodline of the Divine Tree of Life to recover. A second later. Huff huff, that scared me to death. Yi Xian breathed a sigh of relief. If his head was chopped off, it would be useless even if he had the bloodline of the Divine Tree of Life. Of course, it would be fine even if his head was chopped off. After all, he still had a clone in the Eastern continent. However, that clone had yet to break through to half-Shizuan. If the main body were to die, the clone would have to cultivate anew. Damn it, I forgot to leave a supreme pill for my clone. Yi Xian looked at the deputy saber general on the ground and subconsciously took a few steps back. All the supreme pills he had just obtained had been swallowed by his original body, and he had forgotten to keep one. Otherwise, his clone in the Eastern continent would also be able to break through to half supremacy. If something were to happen to the main body in the general's tomb, his clone would be able to make a comeback. Young man, you are very powerful. Congratulations on passing the test. The reward for the 10th test is a quasi-supreme spiritual treasure. What kind of weapon do you want? That voice sounded again. A sword, Yi Xian answered without thinking. What a joke. He had the bloodline of the divine sword in his body, which could increase the power of his sword skills and comprehension by 50%. If he did not choose a sword, would he choose a saber? Okay. As soon as he finished speaking, a long sword suddenly fell from the sky. Yi Xian hurried over and picked up the long sword. The name of the sword was Lingxi. Lingxi sword, a quasi-supreme divine weapon. Yi Xian's eyes flickered. If he had this quasi-supreme divine weapon just now, the deputy saber general would be nothing. Most likely, in less than 3 rounds, that deputy long saber would be killed. Quasi-supreme divine weapons, like ethereal divine weapons, could be nurtured by genuine energy. Moreover, a quasi-supreme spiritual treasure would be much more powerful than an upper-grade ethereal divine weapon. Yi Xian compared the Lingxi sword with the Bahuang sword. The Lingxi sword, which had not been nurtured by genuine energy, had already surpassed the Bahuang sword, which had been nurtured for dozens of years. Its combat power had doubled again. I wonder what the realms of Master and Qinghua are. Yi Xian could not help but think. These people were also half-supreme martial artists, but he did not ask. After all, their realms were a secret. Who would tell others? Young man, you have received the reward for the 10th test. You can go directly to the general's palace. Of course, you can also go to the soothing lake or the smelting building. Rumble. As soon as he finished speaking, a door at the side of the training ground suddenly opened. Yi Xian glanced at the Wolf-Fang cavalry and the deputy saber general. In fact, he wanted to take the long saber with him. After all, it was also a quasi-supreme divine weapon. However, this long saber had merged with the deputy saber general, so he probably could not take it. Moreover, the remnant consciousness of the Wolf-Fang general would definitely not allow him to take the long saber. At that moment, Yi Xian held the Lingxi sword and the Bahuang sword and walked into the door. Behind the door there were 3 paths to take. The general's palace was directly ahead, the soothing lake was on the left, and the smelting building was on the right. Yi Xian had passed the 8th test and obtained a map of the general's tomb. There were some markings on it. The Wolf-Fang general was decisive in killing. The soldiers under his command were very brave and fierce. They killed without blinking their eyes. Therefore, these soldiers needed to train their state of mind to avoid falling into the path of killing. The soothing lake was to help these soldiers. It was actually an illusion array that could remove the soldiers' inner demons. As for the smelting building, it was indeed a place to forge weapons and mechanisms. There were many mechanisms there, which tested one's strength and insight. Yi Xian was very glad that he did not choose the smelting building. Although he was not stupid, he hated this kind of place the most. If he wanted to successfully pass the smelting building, it would definitely be much slower than the troop training ground. This general's palace is another maze. Fortunately, I have the map. It seems that I should be able to reach the main palace and obtain the general's seal. Yi Xian glanced around. His intuition told him that the general's seal must be in the main palace. He immediately walked straight ahead. Before long, he came out of the troop training ground. There was a large palace in front of him. It was the general's palace. Someone's there? At this moment, Yi Xian raised an eyebrow because he suddenly saw a black figure rush into the general's palace. He remembered that among the 5 major factions, only the people from the Shangguan family wore black cloaks and black face scarves. They looked mysterious. However, what surprised Yi Xian was that the other party came out faster than him. Oh right, you can come out of the troop training ground after passing the 5th test. Yi Xian suddenly remembered this matter. Since someone had entered the general's palace before him, he could not fall behind. He quickly rushed over but lost sight of the black figure. Forget it. I'll follow the map and find the main palace. Chapter 748. There were still some mechanisms and puppets in the general's hall. Yixian only had a map, but it didn't indicate where the mechanisms were. Therefore he didn't dare to run too fast. Whoosh! 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 Yixian started to move forward after figuring out the mechanism in one of the passageways. There was a pattern to the appearance of the quiver. It took him a few minutes to figure it out. However, after he passed through the passageway, he heard an unusual sound. Clang! 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 The sound of weapons colliding entered Yixian's ears. There's a battle in the corner ahead. Yixian's eyes lit up. However, he couldn't guarantee that the people in front were on his side. However, there was a voice in front that he was familiar with. Qinghua. Yixian quickly rushed over. When he turned the corner, he saw Qinghua. At this moment, Qinghua was being attacked by two people. Yixian glanced around. Except for the 6 people from the Shangguan clan, who were under the black cloak, he remembered the rest. At least he knew which faction they were from. Of the 2 people attacking Qinghua, one was from the Yang clan, and the other was from the Li clan. They're so fast. Their realms are higher than mine. Yixian frowned. These 3 people's speeds were about the same. Yixian estimated that their wills were about 30% complete. However, this didn't mean that they were faster than Yixian. A Li family expert's eyes flickered as he saw Yixian. Not only that, but Qinghua and the other person also noticed him. Kid, run! Qinghua hurriedly shouted. Qinghua and Yixian were related. If not for Qinghua, he would probably still be killing in the Heavens prison. In addition, Qinghua was on their side. Yixian wouldn't just sit by and watch. Senior Qinghua seems to have a quasi-supreme divine weapon. The experts from the Li and Yang clans are coveting it, so they want to kill and steal it. Yixian instantly understood and hurriedly rushed over. Brat, what are you doing? Before Qinghua could finish speaking, he saw the spiritual rhino sword in Yixian's hand. The quality of the sword seemed to be in no way inferior to the sword in his hand. Quasi-supreme divine weapon. Yixian had also obtained a quasi-supreme divine weapon. Let's join forces and kill them. Qinghua immediately changed his mind. Alright. Yixian nodded and shouted. At the same time, the experts of the Yang clan and the Li clan discovered that Yixian also had a quasi-supreme divine weapon. Now they could divide it equally. In an instant, Yixian entered the fray. His opponent was the expert from the Li family. Brat, you actually chose me, you really don't know the difference between life and death. Li Ao coldly shouted. You will be the one to die. Yixian waved his left hand, and an ancient longsword suddenly appeared. In the next moment, the ancient longsword shattered into 9 pieces. One of the 8 blades had been destroyed by the Saber Deputy General, so now one of them was not powerful enough. However, the Bahuang sword was only used to distract him. Nether Dragon Ghostly Force. 36 overlapping shadows. Earth Pulse 256 layers. Double space. The expert from the Li family had already sealed 30% of his body with the Great Emperor's will. His strength was much stronger than the Saber Deputy General. Although the profound meaning did not have much effect on a half-step supreme, as long as it had a little effect, it could determine the outcome of the battle. All in all, Yixian's attacks were stronger and faster than his opponent's. His opponent would not be able to hold on for long. Therefore, Yixian was almost certain to win this battle. Crack! Yixian had only struck once, but his opponent could not withstand it and was directly sent flying far away. Not only that, but the upper-grade ethereal divine weapon that the Li family expert had nurtured for decades shattered into pieces. This strike will take your life. Yixian's expression was solemn as he struck again with his sword. After learning the Nether Dragon Ghostly Force, his attack was as fast as lightning. The slash swept past the Li family expert's body in an instant and cut him in half. Although Yixian had only used 2 slashes, he was very satisfied with his strength. After the Li family's expert died, he quickly rushed over and took his interspatial ring. Since the Li family expert was here to explore the ruins, there were not many things in the interspatial ring, but it was better than nothing. Yixian kept a supreme pill and swallowed the rest. Almost at the same time, Yixian's clone in the eastern continent swallowed this supreme pill and broke through to the half-step supreme realm. The Li family expert was instantly killed. This scene fell into the eyes of Qinghua and the young family expert. They were very shocked. The one who was most surprised was none other than Qinghua. Previously, when Qinghua was wandering in the heavenly prison, he coincidentally met Yixian, who used the wind-cutting blade. So he invited him to sit down and chat for a while. At that time, Yixian was only a first-stage great emperor. But now, Yixian had grown to the point where he could kill a half-step supreme realm expert. This was hard for Qinghua to accept. "Senior Qinghua, I'll help you," Yixian shouted and immediately turned around and rushed back. The young family expert was not stupid. His companion's strength was similar to his, but even he was killed by Yixian in an instant. Not to mention Qinghua, even Yixian could kill him alone. If he did not leave, would he be courting death? "Haha, you think you can escape from me?" Yixian sneered in his heart and rushed forward with the nether dragon ghostly force. 36 overlapping shadows. 256 layers of earth pulse. His attack was very fast. The young family expert who had 30% of his great emperor willpower sealed could not withstand it at all. He was sent flying, and his high-grade void god weapon shattered in an instant. The young family expert's face was gloomy as he cursed in his heart. However, he did not see Yixian attack again. Whoosh! 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 Indeed, Yixian didn't attack because he didn't need it. The 7 sharp blades had already flown over before him. Pooh! 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 The 7 blades all sank into the young family expert's head. In the next moment, the young family expert's head exploded, turning into a headless corpse. 2 half-step supremes with 30% of their great emperor willpower sealed were dead. Yixian quickly rushed over and kept the interspatial ring. Although his cultivation had only increased a little, it was not bad. "Senior Qinghua, are you okay?" Yixian asked. At this moment, Qinghua was already stunned on the spot. The 2 people that he couldn't fight back at all were actually killed by Yixian one by one. In that case, Yixian's strength was already stronger than his. "I'm fine." Qinghua calmed himself down and laughed dryly. "Compared to you, my aptitude is really nothing." "Senior Qinghua, you flatter me." Yixian smiled and asked, "I wonder if the others." Chapter 749. It seems that Master and the others are still in those 3 places. Yixian narrowed his eyes. The map he had obtained had explanations for all 3 stages. If one wasn't strong enough, they would be trapped in the training grounds. If one wasn't strong enough, they would fall into illusions. The smelting building could also be trapped in there. In any case, those who could make it out were all capable. Let's not worry about that for now. I got a map from Soothing Lake. Let's go to the main hall and get the general's seal. Once we get it, we can control the tomb, Qinghua said. Control the tomb? Yixian raised an eyebrow. Wasn't the seal supposed to control the 3,000 Wolfang cavalry? However, if he could control the entire general's tomb, that would be great. Let's go, Qinghua said, leading the way. Now that Yixian was working with him, the 2 of them advanced quickly. They inched closer and closer to the main hall. Yixian had a map in his hand as well, but he realized that Qinghua's route was different from his. It also led to the main hall. Qinghua had come from Soothing Lake, while he had come from the training grounds. If that was the case, then the smelting building might have a different map as well. Either way, it led to the main hall. With Yixian and Qinghua working together, they reached the main hall in less than half an hour. However, the main hall's doors were closed. If I want to open the door to the main palace, I have to gather all 5 elements? When Yixian saw the words on the stone wall beside the main hall's entrance, he immediately rolled his eyes. There were only 2 of them. They definitely couldn't gather all 5 elements. I'm of the fire element, you're of the earth element. As long as we gather metal, wood and water, we can open the doors, Qinghua said. Although that was the case, the wood element was as rare as the earth element. What if none of the 31 came with the wood element? Besides, even if he had the wood attribute, what if he was trapped in those 3 places in the military training ground or died? There's no other way. Looks like we can only wait. Yixian shook his head helplessly. They were indeed here first, but if they couldn't gather all 5 elements, they wouldn't be able to enter. Therefore, they could only wait. There were a total of 3 paths leading to the main palace. Yixian and Qinghua were hiding on the path leading to Calm Heart Lake. while Yixian had piled up many peak true profound realm puppets on the other two paths. Although these puppets only had a combat strength of 5, if someone came over they would definitely shatter them. That way Yixian and Qinghua would know. Yixian and Qinghua waited for an hour. What's going on with this Wolfang general? Half-step supremes rarely use profound meanings. Why does he need to gather all 5 elements to open the gate? Bluefire felt helpless as well. Half-step supremes basically relied on their physique and ignition to fight. Profound meanings weren't very useful to half-step supremes, unless they comprehended profound meanings like earth traversal, wind acceleration, and dual space. Gotcha! Suddenly, a voice entered Yixian and Qinghua's ears. Their bodies trembled as they immediately darted to the corner to see who had come. The voice came from next door, and it was very close. Although Qinghua had an official title, under such circumstances the other party didn't care about that. They would kill him first. Soon, the person who had attracted Yixian and Qinghua's attention appeared. And it wasn't just one person. Xianzhong Tai, so it's you. Qinghua immediately darted out. The newcomers were Mountain Man Xianzhong and Sword God Tai. Mountain Man Xianzhong and Sword God Tai hadn't expected to encounter their own people. When Qinghua's voice sounded, they almost attacked. How was it? How was your harvest? Qinghua asked. Not bad. I passed the soldier training ground and obtained a quasi-supreme divine weapon. However, Tai gave it up on the 7th floor of the smelting building. Mountain Man Xianzhong said. It doesn't matter if you didn't obtain it. Now that we've arrived at the main palace, as long as we obtain the general's seal, we can control the general's tomb. Qinghua comforted. Sword God Tai asked in astonishment. How do you know that the general's seal can control the general's tomb? There's a remnant will of General Wolfang at Soothing Lake, and he told me about it. However, the general's seal isn't something an ordinary person can obtain. There's another test in the main palace. Not only that, but we also need to gather all 5 elements to open the door to the main palace. Qinghua replied. Yixian had already understood when he was with Qinghua, so he wasn't surprised. We have to open the door and pass the test to obtain the general's seal? Mountain Man Xianzhong and Sword God Tai glanced at each other. I have the metal and water elements. Mountain Man Xianzhong has the earth and wood elements, and Qinghua, you have the fire element. You have all 5 elements. Sword God Tai's eyes lit up as he looked around. Yixian and Qinghua were the first to reach the main palace, but their luck wasn't very good. They were actually stuck here. If they couldn't gather the remaining 2 elements, they wouldn't even be able to enter the door, let alone talk about the general's seal. However, Qinghua had forgotten that Sword God Tai and Mountain Man Xianzhong both had 2 elements. The metal element was Sword God Tai, the wood element was Mountain Man Xianzhong, the water element was Sword God Tai, the fire element was Qinghua, and the earth element was Mountain Man Xianzhong and Yixian. They had all 5 elements. Let's go in before they get here. The 4 of them immediately rushed over. Yixian watched as the 3 of them poured their true qi of different elements into the round hole in the main palace's door. Rumble! The main palace's door finally opened. The 4 of them immediately rushed in. Let's close the door first. Qinghua suggested. They had gone to great lengths to gather all 5 elements, so they couldn't just let others in. If they wanted to enter, they would have to gather all 5 elements again. Rumble! The door was pushed shut, and the array activated once more. Then the 4 of them began to look around and size up the main palace. The general's main palace only had 16 pillars and a platform in the middle. On the platform were 4 long saber deputy generals. In the middle of the 4 long saber deputy generals was a set of golden armor. The golden armor held a sword in one hand and a square object in the other. It must be the general's seal. Everyone, congratulations on arriving at the main palace. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out in the main palace. It was General Wolfang's voice. Yixian and the other 3 listened attentively. They didn't immediately go over to take the general's seal, because General Wolfang was proficient in arrays and mechanisms. Who knew if there was a dangerous mechanism on the platform? General Wolfang, how do we get the general's seal? Qinghua asked agitatedly. Chapter 750. Although the Wolfang general had been dead for thousands of years, his lingering will had not dissipated. He paused and said, if you want to take the general's seal, You have to defeat my 4 long saber deputy generals and the dragon-patterned golden armor that I spent my entire life building. Gotcha. When General Wolf Fong finished his words, the 5 armors on the stage suddenly moved. As expected, they could move. The one on the left hand of the dragon-patterned golden armor is the general's seal. If anyone can get it, the entire general's tomb will be his, including the dragon-patterned golden armor. General Wolf Fong's voice echoed in the main hall. Dragon-patterned golden armor? It sounds very domineering. Yi Xian murmured. Unexpectedly, these words were heard by General Wolf Fong. Ha 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 ha, young man. This dragon-patterned golden armor is my life's work. As long as you bind it with your blood, you can keep it in your dantian. At the same time, the dragon-patterned golden armor is indestructible and has a special effect. It can withstand 20% of the power of the Supreme Being Tribulation. General Wolf Fong's lingering will laughed. When he said that, the 4 people present were shocked. Withstand 20% of the power of the Supreme Being Tribulation? After breaking through to the peak Great Emperor realm, one would become a half-Supreme Being. However, there were different levels of half-Supreme Being. Only those who had sealed 100% of the Great Emperor realms could receive the Supreme Being Tribulation. If they passed the Supreme Being Tribulation, they could condense the Supreme Being Golden Body. Qinghua and the others knew the power of the Supreme Being Tribulation. Although they had not seen it before, they had heard of it. If 10 half-Supreme Being Peak Great Emperors received the Supreme Being Tribulation, only one could truly become a Supreme Being. However, this dragon-patterned golden armor could withstand 20% of the power of the Supreme Being Tribulation. It was simply amazing. Haha. Now you know the power of the dragon-patterned golden armor? Unfortunately, when I wore this dragon-patterned golden armor, I was still blasted into pieces by the Supreme Being Tribulation. Only a lingering will of mine is left. General Wolf Fong sighed and said, Alright, if the 4 of you want the general's seal, go ahead. Gotcha. Under the control of General Wolf Fong's lingering will, the dragon-patterned golden armor walked down the stage. The other 4 deputy generals also looked at Yi Xian and the others, waiting for their attacks. This dragon-patterned golden armor is indeed not bad, but after so many years of cultivation, I have only sealed 30% of my body with the will of the Great Emperor. I am not destined to become a supreme being in this life. Qinghua knew his own worth and shook his head helplessly. I'm already old. Even if I get the dragon-patterned golden armor, it won't be of much use to me. Sword Gatai shook his head. Their intentions were clear. They were giving up on the dragon-patterned golden armor. At that moment, Yi Xian looked at Mountain Man Xian Zhongshan. Mountain Man Xian Zhongshan had the appearance of a middle-aged man and looked slightly younger. Yi Xian, don't look at him, Qinghua reminded. He only got a little bit of the immortal spring by chance when we were roaming the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty. He's the oldest among the 3 of us. What? This gave Yi Xian a fright. He suddenly recalled that the 3 of them had roamed the world together for several decades. I am indeed the oldest. It would be a waste to give this dragon-patterned golden armor to me. As for Yi Xian, you are only in your early 20s. You have the highest possibility of reaching the peak of half-step Supreme Being, and sealing 100% of the will of the Great Emperor. If you use this dragon-patterned golden armor, you might be able to become a Supreme Being. At that time, you can establish a kingdom and a sacred dynasty. Mountain Man Xian Zhongshan looked at Yi Xian and said, This. Yi Xian was stunned. He originally thought that he would have to compete with Qinghua and the others, but now it seemed that wasn't the case. The 3 of us will help you obtain the general's seal, and let you control the general's tomb. When the time comes, we can bask in your glory, Sword God Tai said. The 3 of them had high hopes for Yi Xian. Although Mountain Man Xian Zhongshan's personal disciple He Yan was also a half-step Supreme Being, he was already in his 40s. It was just that Mountain Man Xian Zhongshan had given him some of the immortal spring. In terms of aptitude, no one present could compare to Yi Xian. Alright. Since the 3 of them had reached a consensus, Yi Xian naturally couldn't refuse, so he immediately nodded. Those 4 deputy saber generals seemed to be more powerful than those in the troop training ground. Sword God Tai and I will hold them back. You and Qinghua will deal with the dragon-patterned golden armor. Mountain Man Xian Zhongshan glanced at him. He had come from the troop training ground, so he had seen how powerful the deputy saber generals were. Although he now had a quasi-supreme divine weapon, he didn't dare to be careless as there were too many of them. The four of you, if you are ready, then take action. The Wolf Fang general's voice sounded again. Go! Mountain Man Xian Zhongshan and Sword God Tai looked at each other, then immediately charged out. At the same time, Qinghua also condensed 6 flame doppelgangers to help. Yi Xian also shattered the Bahuang sword, hoping to quickly deal with the 4 deputy saber generals. As long as the 4 deputy saber generals were defeated, it would be time for the 4 of them to besiege the dragon-patterned golden armor. The 4 of them quickly swept out, attacking the 4 deputy saber generals with all their might. However, the dragon-patterned golden armor defeated their attacks first, then went straight for Yi Xian. What a fast speed! Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. The dragon-patterned golden armor was indeed much more powerful than the deputy saber generals. With his current speed, he might not be able to defeat it. The 3 of you, give me your interspatial rings. Yi Xian hastily shouted in anger. Under such circumstances, Yi Xian could no longer hide, because if they were defeated, they would only end up dead. If they died, what was the use of the interspatial ring? Qinghua and the other 2 were startled when they heard this. They immediately took off their interspatial rings without hesitation and threw them to Yi Xian. At this time, the dragon-patterned golden armor had already swept in front of Yi Xian with the Wolf Fang sword in his hand and slashed down. Clang! Yi Xian raised his spiritual rhino sword high and blocked the attack. In an instant, Yi Xian felt immense pressure. The dragon-patterned golden armor was at least twice as powerful as the deputy saber generals. The deputy saber generals could fight against 100 people alone, and the dragon-patterned golden armor was twice as powerful as the deputy saber generals. However, this did not mean that the dragon-patterned golden armor could fight against 200 people alone. Twice as powerful would be infinitely magnified. It was possible for it to be 300, 400, or even 500 people. If Yi Xian had not mastered the Nether Dragon ghostly force, this attack would have cut him in half. 7-fold fiery dragon sword. Qinghua and his 6 fire avatars slashed at the dragon-patterned golden armor. The 7 slashes combined into one was extremely powerful. The dragon-patterned golden armor turned around and dispersed the attack with a single slash. However, this also bought him some time. 36 overlapping shadows. Pulsation of the earth 256 layers. Yi Xian seized the opportunity to strike the dragon-patterned golden armor away. Chapter 751. Come! Yi Xian immediately rushed over and took the 3 rings. Ding! Host has broken through. Current Great Emperor Intent Seal is at 20%. Qinghua and the other 2 were here to train, so they didn't bring much in their rings. It was only enough for Yi Xian to break through once. However, breaking through once was enough. 36 overlapping shadows. Throbbing earth 256 layers. After breaking through, Yi Xian's strength skyrocketed. He attacked the dragon-patterned golden armor madly. Boom! 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 The dragon-patterned golden armor held the Wolf Fang sword in one hand and the General's seal in the other. It defeated Yi Xian's attacks one by one. At this moment, Yi Xian's strength was about the same as the dragon-patterned golden armors. Yi Xian, I'll go and help. Qinghua knew he couldn't help much, so he shouted. Yi Xian nodded silently. He could still hold the dragon-patterned golden armor back by himself. On the other side, even if Qinghua didn't join in, the 4 deputy generals couldn't do anything to Hermit Xian Zhongzhong and Tai Sword God. Now that Qinghua had joined in, the 4 deputy generals were all defeated in a few seconds. Scatter their armors and delay them from regrouping. Hermit Xian Zhongzhong shouted. Immediately, the 3 of them disorganized the armors and threw them to the 4 corners of the main hall. Next, it was the 4 of them fighting the dragon-patterned golden armor. Yi Xian, this dragon-patterned golden armor is indestructible. Seize the general's seal. Tai Sword God shouted. Yi Xian naturally knew this. However, the general's seal was in the dragon-patterned golden armor's hands. It wasn't that easy to seize it. 36 overlapping shadows. Throbbing earth 256 layers. Yi Xian and the other 3 launched a group attack on the dragon-patterned golden armor. Hermit Xian Zhongzhong was the strongest among the 3. Like Yi Xian, He used the 36 overlapping shadows as his main attack. At the same time, his throbbing pulse of the earth had also evolved to 128 layers, just one step away from the disintegration profound. He had been stuck at this level for more than 10 years and still hadn't reached the 256th level to comprehend the disintegration profound. Next, the third in terms of strength was Qinghua. His sevenfold fire dragon sword was extremely powerful, and with that quasi-paragon divine weapon, his strength was second only to mountain man Xianzhong. On the other hand, the Tai sword deity was a little more miserable. He did not have a quasi-supreme divine weapon, so his strength was the weakest. As a result, he took the initiative to seize the opportunity, once again defeating those long-blade deputy generals who were preparing to regroup. Now Yixian was working with Green Fire and Mountain Man Xianzhong to attack the dragon pattern golden armor. Unfortunately, the dragon pattern golden armor's defensive power was so strong that even Yixian's all-out attack could not leave a mark on it. Therefore, he could only use his wits to obtain the general seal. However, right at this moment, boom! Suddenly a loud noise entered everyone's ears. Yixian and the other three were startled. They turned their heads and saw that the doors to the main hall had opened again. Not good. Yixian and the other three shouted in their hearts. At this moment they saw a total of 10 people. The remaining 4 forces had also gathered the 5 elements and opened the doors to the main hall. The Tuoba family, the Li family, the Yang family, and the Shangguan family were all there. Who would have thought that someone would beat us to it? The master of the Li family's eyes flickered as his gaze landed on the dragon pattern golden armor's left hand. The general seal. That's the general seal. Someone exclaimed. Go! In an instant the 10 people rushed over together. Retreat! Yixian shouted with a solemn expression. This time he had to temporarily avoid the attack. Qinghua and the other 2 did not dare to delay and hurriedly gathered around Yixian. Coincidentally, after these people entered, the dragon pattern golden armor stopped attacking Yixian and rushed towards them. Yixian heaved a sigh of relief. Originally, he could only suppress the dragon pattern golden armor. Now that so many people had come, he might be able to obtain the general seal. Yixian, do you have any ideas? Qinghua suddenly turned his head and asked. Yes, I need a large amount of heavenly treasures. Yixian nodded. At this moment the 3 of them finally reacted. After Yixian obtained their universe rings, his cultivation level suddenly soared by a level. This battle is unavoidable. Since that's the case, the 4 of us should join forces and kill all these people first. Qinghua's eyes flickered. Men die for wealth, just as birds die for food. They did not have any dealings with the 4 great families, so it was natural for them to kill all of them for profit. I think so too. However, it's best to pay attention to the cloaked man from the Shangguan family. I feel that something is wrong with them, Hermit Xian Zhongshan reminded. In fact, even without his reminder, Yixian would pay attention to them. The 6 people from the Shangguan family were too strange. They wore black cloaks and black face scarves for no reason. Anyone would be suspicious of them. The 4 of them roughly discussed their strategy and immediately rushed over. The dragon pattern golden armor was very strong, but the family heads of the 4 great families were not weak either. They each held a quasi-supreme spiritual treasure in their hands and were frantically suppressing the dragon pattern golden armor. They are coming! An expert from the Li family noticed Yixian and the other 3 people and hurriedly shouted. You guys go and kill the 4 of them! The Yang family head shouted. There was only 1 general seal, but there were 5 forces here. Therefore, a bloody battle was bound to happen. Although only one of the 6 people was from the Yang family, they had reached a consensus. The 6 of them quickly charged toward Yixian and the other 3 people. You overestimate yourselves. Die! Yixian held the spiritual rhino sword tightly and instantly attacked the 6 people. Qinghua and the other 2 people did the same. Boom! 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 Countless saber lights and sword shadows collided, and the air billowed. The movement was so loud that it seemed to shake the entire hall. However, what shocked everyone was that the 6 people could not withstand the charge of Yixian and the other 3 people and were slaughtered in the blink of an eye. What a joke! Yixian sighed, except for the Tai sword god. All had quasi-supreme divine weapons. Yixian was the strongest among the 4 people. A mere 6 people would not be able to withstand a round of explosive attacks from them. Interspatial rings, take them. Yi Xian hurriedly took the 6 people's interspatial rings, and his strength soared. However, it was not enough. He frowned. Even if he killed the family heads of the 4 great families, it would not be enough for him to break through again. However, his strength could be further improved. Let's kill them first. Yi Xian did not care so much anymore. At the same time, the Shangguan family head shouted, I will hold the dragon-patterned golden armor. You guys go. The other 3 family heads paused, but then they remembered that the dragon-patterned golden armor was not something that ordinary people could deal with. Even if the Shangguan family head was alone, he would not be able to get the general seal. At that moment, it was better to kill Yi Xian and the other 3 people first. Qinghua, since you are courting death, don't blame me, the Li family head shouted. Chapter 752. Previously, Yi Xian had already surpassed Qinghua in terms of strength. Now that he had made another breakthrough, the 3 family heads were no match for him. You think you can stop me? Yi Xian's eyes lit up as he slashed with all his might. 36 overlapping shadows. 256 layers of earth pulse. Boom! The Li family head was shocked as he hastily blocked with his quasi-supreme divine weapon. If it was an ordinary high-grade ethereal divine weapon, it would have been shattered by Yi Xian. However, the Li family head was holding a quasi-supreme divine weapon. Even with Yi Xian's disintegration ultimacy, he couldn't destroy it. However, Yi Xian's attack was extremely strong. The Li family head's hands went numb as the quasi-supreme divine weapon suddenly stuck to his chest. A few of his ribs were shattered by Yi Xian's powerful attack, and he was sent flying. The Tuoba and Yang family heads were shocked. They didn't expect Yi Xian to be the strongest person on Qinghua's side. While they were still in shock, 7 sharp blades suddenly flew towards the Li family head. Bang! 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 After a few muffled sounds, the Li family head's head exploded and turned into a corpse. At the same time, the Li family head's Qian Kuan ring and the quasi-supreme divine weapon in his hand flew towards Yi Xian. Don't be hasty. The 2 of you will die too. Yi Xian slashed again. The Tuoba and Yang family heads were gloomy. Yi Xian had actually slashed twice at them in an instant. They were already exhausted from blocking Qinghua and Mountain Man Xin Zhongshan's attacks. Now that they had to face Yi Xian's attack, they immediately fled and prepared to leave the main palace. The general seal was no longer something they could get their hands on. You want to leave? Stay. Yi Xian saw that his 2 attacks had failed and hurriedly chased after them. The Tuoba and Yang family heads had stronger physiques than Qinghua and the other 2. 35% of their great emperor intent had been sealed. Even so, they were not as fast as Yi Xian. Yi Xian happened to get his hands on the Qian Kuan ring and the quasi-supreme divine weapon, so he devoured them immediately. The value of a quasi-supreme divine weapon was worth at least 10 interspatial rings. After Yi Xian took it to Tainan City, he made a breakthrough. Ding! The host has broken through. The current seal of the Great Emperor's will is at 25%. The 2 of you die. Yi Xian's physique was raised to a whole new level, and he instantly slashed out a few times with his sword. The sword light was as fast as lightning and directly struck the quasi-supreme divine weapons of the Tuoba and Yang family heads. Pooh! Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood as they were blasted out of the main hall. Yi Xian hurriedly rushed over, but at this moment, a few figures suddenly entered his line of sight. They directly killed the Tuoba family's patriarch and the Yang family's patriarch, and seized their quasi-supreme divine weapons. What? Yi Xian was shocked. He did not expect that there would be a few people hiding outside the main hall. They were all from the Shangguan family. They were wearing black robes, and their faces could not be seen clearly. There were exactly 5 of them. How dare you steal my things? You are courting death. Yi Xian did not care how mysterious the other party was, and directly attacked. After all, he wanted to give one of the 2 supreme divine weapons to the Tai Sword God, but now it was snatched away. 36 overlapping shadows. 256 layers of earth pulse. A sword light flashed. But what surprised Yi Xian was that his sword was blocked by one of the black-robed men, who was holding a quasi-supreme divine weapon. How is this possible? Yi Xian was shocked. His sword was enough to kill the Tuoba family head and the Yang family head. But how could this man from the Shangguan family block it? This was not logical. Tisk. At this moment, the black-robed man suddenly laughed dryly, and immediately took off his mask, revealing his face. When Yixian saw his face clearly, his body trembled. He knew this person. Zhang Tianjin, it's you? Yixian exclaimed. That's right, the person who blocked his sword was Zhang Tianjin, who had injured him with the triple heaven burning flame and caused him to be imprisoned in the heaven's prison. He originally thought that Zhang Tianjin was lingering in a corner, but he did not expect to see him again. Moreover, he had broken through to the half-supreme master level and was able to block his sword. Yes, it's me. Zhang Tianjin took off his hood, but there were some strange black patterns on his face, covering half of his face. Yixian felt that something was wrong and immediately shouted, I let you escape that day. Today is the day you die. He did not care about anything else and directly attacked. He felt that Zhang Tianjin was a little difficult to deal with now. Boom! Yixian's attack was defeated again. However, just as he was about to rush over, the corner of Zhang Tianjin's mouth curled up slightly, and he shouted, Formation! Then the 4 black-robed men behind him spread out, and madly threw out lanterns. Yixian recognized these lanterns. They were the Spectre lanterns. Spectre formation trap? In an instant, Yixian felt a strong pressure. These were the wills of peak great emperors. What? Now Yixian finally understood why Zhang Tianjin had broken through so quickly. It turned out that he had joined the Spectre sect. At this moment there were more than 100 Spectre lanterns floating in the air, and the wills of more than 100 peak great emperors pressed down on Yixian, making it difficult for him to break through. I can't move. Yixian was shocked. Although he was already a half-supreme master, and had 25% of his body sealed by the wills of the great emperors, he was still not a true supreme. Only the sovereign golden body could completely resist the wills of the great emperors. Tsk. Yixian, you didn't expect that you would still fall into my hands, right? Zhang Tianjin walked over with a sinister smile. Swish. But at this moment a few piercing sounds rang out, and a few of the Spectre lanterns were shattered. You're courting death. Zhang Tianjin's eyes flashed, and he quickly slashed at Qinghua and the others. Boom! 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 The 4 of them were sent flying, and Tai Sword God was seriously injured. Oh no! Yixian's face darkened. He felt that he was going to be screwed this time. Only now did he remember that Zhang Tianjin had broken through to the 3rd Order Great Emperor realm because of the Great Emperors will bestowed by the 9th Heaven Sword God. Then, the 9th Heaven Sword God might be related to the Spectre sect. This time Zhang Tianjin had gone to the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty, and he might have joined the Spectre sect. Then, he might have been recognized and broken through to the half-supreme master realm. A speck of light dares to compete with the bright moon? Zhang Tianjin's face suddenly turned cold, and his personality changed. Previously, he regretted not killing Yixian earlier, causing his father to be tortured. Now he was going to cut Yixian down with his sword. Yixian clenched his teeth. He really wanted to leave, but the formation formed by hundreds of peak great emperors' ghost lanterns trapped him tightly, making him unable to move. Chapter 753. Yixian was already prepared to die. It seemed that this time he was really going to die here. However, things were not as bad as he thought they would be. The Nether sect? I didn't expect them to survive until now. Kid, I'll make a deal with you. The General Seal is yours. Destroy them. Suddenly, a voice rang out in the main hall. It was General Wolfang's voice. In the next moment, the hundreds of floating spirit lanterns suddenly exploded. Bang! 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 As the spirit lanterns exploded one by one, the pressure on Yixian disappeared bit by bit. Oh no! Zhang Tianjin's expression changed. He hurriedly swung his sword, preparing to kill Yixian. However, his attack was blocked by the dragon-patterned golden armor. Yixian was shocked. General Wolfang was helping him at this critical moment. However, from what General Wolfang's lingering consciousness said, the Nether sect had existed for thousands of years. I agree. Thinking of this, Yixian hurriedly replied loudly. Hearing his reply, The dragon-patterned golden armor waved its hand and threw the general's seal at Yixian. Yixian had already reduced his speed. He hurriedly ran over and caught the general's seal. In the next moment, a notification rang out in his mind. Ding! Discovered the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Will the host learn it? Yixian was stunned for a moment, then immediately confirmed. Ding! Host has learned the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. The general's seal was actually just a tray. With the general's seal, one could control the entire general's tomb. However, if one learned the 10,000 divine thoughts technique, one could control the entire general's tomb even without the general's seal. While Yixian was still rejoicing, the dragon-patterned golden armor appeared in front of him. Bind it with blood. General Wolfang's voice rang out in Yixian's ears. Yixian hurriedly cut open his finger and lightly tapped on the dragon-patterned golden armor. In the next moment, the dragon-patterned golden armor was absorbed into his body through his wound, leaving only the Wolfang sword behind. The dragon-patterned golden armor has successfully bound you. Come out. Yixian caught the Wolfang sword and immediately activated the dragon-patterned golden armor. Gotcha! Jiang Tianjin and the others only saw a flash of golden light before Yixian was enveloped by the dragon-patterned golden armor. The dragon-patterned golden armor covered Yixian's entire body. Even his eyes were hidden, but Yixian could see his surroundings through the armor. At this moment, Yixian was in his Ultraman form. His defense was impenetrable. Damn it, get into formation! Jiang Tianjin shouted in a low voice. Immediately, the four people behind him, as well as the master of the Shangguan family who had held the golden dragon-patterned armor back, threw out lanterns after lanterns. However, this time, these spirit lanterns were completely useless against Yixian, who was wearing the dragon-patterned golden armor. Yixian held the spiritual rhino sword in his left hand and the Wolfang sword in his right. He slowly walked towards Jiang Tianjin and the other five. It's useless. Let's go. Jiang Tianjin's expression changed greatly, and he immediately turned around. However, at this moment, boom! The door of the main hall suddenly closed. Isn't it too late to leave now? Yixian, who was wearing the dragon-patterned golden armor, slowly walked towards the six people. At this moment, Jiang Tianjin felt as if there were 10,000 alpacas galloping in his heart. He regretted it again. If he had known earlier, he would have directly attacked and killed Yixian when he trapped Yixian. He originally wanted to torture Yixian once, but he didn't expect that the Wolfang general's remnant consciousness would shatter all the spirit lanterns, allowing Yixian to escape. Not only that, but he also took the initiative to give the general's seal to Yixian. Now that Yixian was wearing the dragon-patterned golden armor, he was no longer someone they could fight against. What should we do, division leader? The master of the Shangguan family asked with a frown. Jiang Tianjin's face was livid. Now they only had one choice, and that was to kill Yixian. Kill! As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Tianjin led the other five people and charged towards Yixian. You overestimate yourselves. Yixian snorted coldly and met them head-on. With the dragon-patterned golden armor, he didn't need to defend at all. He only needed to attack with all his might. Among the six people, apart from Jiang Tianjin, the other five weren't very strong. Yixian could kill them in 2 strikes. 36 overlapping shadows. Throbbing pulse of the earth, 256 layers. Jiang Tianjin's great emperor intent had reached 40%, which was 15% higher than Yixian's. However, he only suppressed Yixian in terms of cultivation level. Yixian now had 2 quasi-supreme divine weapons and the dragon-patterned golden armor. He could also control 4 Changdao deputies. Together with Qinghua and the other 2, Jiang Tianjin's chances of victory were close to 0. Bang! 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 In this 1 versus 6 battle, Yixian alone was enough. He didn't need the help of Changdao deputies or Qinghua and the other 2. With the Wolfang sword and spiritual rhino sword in hand, he blocked Jiang Tianjin's attacks and killed the other 5 helpers. After the 5 other black-robed men died, Jiang Tianjin was in despair. He was like a cornered beast fighting. He couldn't hurt Yixian. Was there any suspense in this battle? Devour. Yixian took the 5 interspatial rings and the 2 quasi-supreme divine weapons. There were many peak great emperor intent in the 5 interspatial rings. In total, there were 500 of them. These things helped Yi Xian break through his cultivation level again. At this moment, Yi Xian's great emperor intent had reached 30%. Ding! The host has broken through. The current great emperor intent has reached 30%. Hearing the notification, Yi Xian's eyes lit up and he slashed with his sword. This time Jiang Tianjin couldn't block it and was sent flying. He crashed into the stone pillar of the main palace and spat out a mouthful of blood. Jiang Tianjin, did you think this day would come? Yi Xian walked over slowly. Jiang Tianjin leaned on the pillar with a pale face and said coldly, I regret not killing you. It's too late to regret now. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth slightly curled up as he smiled. The winner takes all. Kill me if you want. Jiang Tianjin didn't plan to resist anymore. He knew he wouldn't survive today. However, he had another plan in mind. If he didn't die today, he would kill his way back to the eastern continent and kill Yi Xian's entire family. Alright, as you wish. This time, Yi Xian didn't want to waste any more words, because things would change if he delayed. He was too slow last time, which gave Jiang Tianjin a chance to take advantage of him. Yi Xian didn't want to make the same mistake again, even though the outcome was already decided. Die! A cold light flashed and Jiang Tianjin's head was separated from his body. His head rolled on the ground. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Yi Xian. Finally, he had his revenge. Wei Zhentian could finally rest in peace. Jiang Tianjin's death also resolved the hatred in Yi Xian's heart. The hatred that he'd been thinking about all this time was quietly resolved. Although Jiang Tianjin had tortured him twice, he was still Jiang Xinyan's nephew. Moreover, Tai Sword God was also present. He couldn't torture his corpse. Crack! After Jiang Tianjin's death, Yi Xian retracted the dragon pattern golden armor and revealed his true appearance. Chapter 754. Qing Hua and the other two walked over in astonishment. They thought that Yi Xian was going to die, but the Wolfang general made a move. Kid, now that the general's seal is in your hands, my general's tomb is yours. However, I hope that you can agree to one condition of mine. The Wolfang general's voice sounded again. Senior, please speak. Yi Xian raised his head and said, in the past I was in charge of eradicating the Nether cult, but I didn't expect it to be completely eradicated. Therefore, I want you to uproot it to prevent it from growing again. This is my request and also my last wish. The Wolfang general's remnant consciousness said, Alright, I agree. Yi Xian directly replied without the slightest hesitation. This time, if it wasn't for the Wolfang general, Yi Xian's original body would have fallen. That was why the Wolfang general had saved his life. Now, how could he not agree to such a small request from the Wolfang general? Young man, don't underestimate the Nether cult. The Nether cult has a secret technique that can forcefully seal one's body with the will of a peak great emperor. As a result, there are countless experts in the Nether cult. Jiang Tianjin, whom you killed just now, was raised using this method. The Nether cult played a large part in the destruction of the ancient Saint dynasty. If the current ancient Saint dynasty is unable to suppress the Nether cult, I'm afraid that the ancient Saint dynasty will follow in its footsteps. Yi Xian nodded solemnly after hearing that. Senior, I will investigate this matter thoroughly. The ancient Saint dynasty that the Wolfang general was from was the predecessor of the Sunflame sacred dynasty. The royal family had the same surname. Since that's the case, I can leave in peace. The current owner of the general's tomb is you. Young man, I hope that you won't let me down. The Wolfang general's remnant consciousness's voice became softer and softer. Yi Xian knew that the remnant consciousness had dissipated on its own accord. Yi Xian also understood the Wolfang general's expectations. The Wolfang general hoped that he could destroy the Nether cult and break through to the Supreme Being realm. Now that he had the dragon pattern golden armor, if he still couldn't break through to the Supreme Being realm, he would be letting down the Wolfang general. Yi Xian, congratulations on taking down the general's tomb. Hermit Xianzhong congratulated. In fact, even Yi Xian had not expected things to turn out this way. He had wanted to seize the general's seal with his own strength, but in the end, it was General Wolfang who saved the day. Let's go take a look at the general's tomb. Yi Xian took out the general's seal again. Although he'd learned the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and could control the general's tomb, There were many mechanisms in the general's tomb. Only with the general's seal would one know where the mechanisms were. In fact, there was another path in the main hall, which was very well hidden. With the general's seal in hand, Yi Xian opened the door. There were several other doors inside. Calm Heart Lake, Training Grounds, Smelting Building, and the Treasure Vault. Yi Xian already knew about the first three. There were also some doors in the middle that led to various places in the general's tomb. As for the treasure pavilion, needless to say, it was used to store treasures. At the same time, there were some mirror-like images beside these doors. The people in the picture were the people from the 4 great clans. They had not successfully left the 3 great dilemmas yet. How should we deal with these people? Yi Xian asked. Kill them. We can't let them go, Qinghua said flatly. Okay. Yi Xian did not hesitate. Then one of the experts from the 4 great clans in the Calm Heart Lake let out a loud roar. Then, he held the long sword in his hand in a reverse grip and stabbed it into his own heart. At the smelting building, the traps suddenly became chaotic. An expert from the 4 great clans was cut in half by a sharp blade. As for the training grounds, one person had just reached the 8th level when 4 saber lieutenants appeared. Shortly after, he was hacked to death by a flurry of sabers. As for Qiu Yuanjia, Hong Wanming, and Hermit Xian's disciple He Yan, who had come with Qinghua, they survived unscathed. At this time, only the 7 of them were left in the general's tomb. Just as Yi Xian was about to take a look at the treasure vault, Qinghua and the other 2 refused to go with him. Yi Xian, we won't go to the treasure vault. You go in yourself, Hermit Xian said. Although they had helped Yi Xian, their help was actually very small. Even without them, Yi Xian could easily handle it. Most importantly, they trusted Yi Xian. Okay. Yi Xian did not say much and sent them to the entrance of the main hall to meet up with He Yan and the other 2. As for himself, he entered the treasure vault. TSK, General Wolfang must have a strong background to be able to take out so many quasi-supreme divine weapons. There must be a lot of things in the treasure vault. Yi Xian's eyes lit up as he walked into the treasure vault. The general's tomb was built in a secret realm. These doors could lead to any place, and only this place could lead to the treasure vault. Yi Xian went through the door and arrived at the treasure vault. There were 3 levels here. The first level was filled with martial arts. Yi Xian did not say anything and copied the martial arts into the devouring system. Most of the martial arts were upper heaven level, and there were only a dozen quasi-supreme martial arts. Then, he went to the second level. There were only a dozen quasi-supreme divine weapons here. Take them all. Yi Xian did not hesitate and kept all the quasi-supreme divine weapons. Yi Xian had already given Jiang Tianjin's quasi-supreme divine weapon to Tai Sword God. There were still 3 people outside the main hall empty-handed, so Yi Xian left a few for He Yan and the other 2, as well as his own parents and friends. As for the rest, he devoured them all. Just a little more and I will be able to break through again. Yi Xian estimated in his heart and went up the stairs to the 3rd level. The 3rd level of the treasure vault was filled with miscellaneous items, such as treasures with various effects, heavenly treasures, supreme pills, and General Wolfang's mechanical skills and formations. If these items were to spread to the outside world, it would cause a huge uproar. However, Yi Xian was interested in the heavenly treasures and supreme pills. There were a total of more than 50,000 supreme pills. Yi Xian kept 20,000 supreme pills, then devoured the rest of the supreme pills and heavenly treasures. Ding! The host has broken through. Currently, the Emperor's will is at 40%. This time Yi Xian broke through 2 shackles and went from 30% to 40%. Even so, Yi Xian still cursed the devouring system. More than 30,000 supreme pills were enough for a person to seal 50% of the Emperor's will, and he could only go from 30% to 40%. Chapter 755. If he wanted to increase the strength of the 3,000 Wolfang cavalry and the 10 deputy generals, he would need a large amount of precious forging materials. Fortunately, as long as he had the materials, the devouring system could be modified in batches. Yi Xian did not think about this for the time being. He sat down cross-legged and began to think. After obtaining the Wolfang sword and spiritual rhino sword, Bahuang's sword could retire. Not only that, but so could Feng Xingqia. At his current level, ultimacy was useless, and its effect on the enemy was negligible. Although the dual space was good, it had no effect on the enemy and him. Although it was a pity, it was the truth. The 256 layers of earth-throbbing technique combined with the 36 overlapping shadows was powerful, but it could only be used for a while. It's a pity that I still can't use the special devouring sword intent. Otherwise, why would I need the quasi-supreme martial arts? Yixian had a headache. After obtaining the sword intent, he would try the special devouring method every time he devoured a treasure. Not only that, he would also try to refine it occasionally, but he was not talented enough and would always fail. Bahuang's sword god was really a super genius. A mere void god realm great emperor had actually comprehended the sword intent. If he had comprehended the sword intent, Yixian's attack would probably be able to injure a real supreme being with a supreme being golden body, not a half supreme being. Yixian shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Now that he had obtained the general's tomb, he could bring Yichong and the rest here to cultivate. After all, the yuan qi in the secret territory was more than 100 times higher than in the eastern continent. The general's tomb was probably created by a supreme being expert, and was later discovered by the Wolf Fang general. There was a large area behind the secret territory. The 4 keys to open the door to the general's tomb had all failed. Now, only the general's seal could open the door. Therefore, Yixian wanted to let his doppelganger hold the general's seal and guard the general's tomb. This way, if he provoked a strong enemy in the future, the general's tomb would be a good place to hide. As long as a true supreme being expert did not come, the general's tomb would be safe. Yixian put away everything in the treasure pavilion, then left. When he arrived at the entrance of the main hall, he found Qinghua and the rest already waiting there. Senior brother he. Yixian shouted and threw 3 quasi-supreme divine weapons to He Yan and the others. Apart from that, he also threw a cloth bag containing 20,000 supreme pills to mountain man Xian Zhongshan. Master, there are 20,000 supreme pills here. You can divide them among yourselves, said Yixian. Now Qinghua and the other 5 all had quasi-supreme divine weapons, so this trip was not in vain. Other than Yixian, there were 5 other parties. If the 20,000 supreme venerable pills were to be divided evenly among them, each party would get 4,000 supreme venerable pills. One had to know that even after so many years they only had a few hundred supreme sovereign pills. Even when Qinghua was at his richest, he didn't have more than 1,000 supreme sovereign pills. 4,000 supreme pills was already a huge amount of wealth. Also, take these quasi-supreme martial arts too. I've already made 6 copies. Yixian threw out another 6 Qian Kuan rings, which landed in the palms of the 6 people. Martial arts were transferable, so they could make as many copies as they wanted. The 6 of them used upper-tier void god martial arts before, but now each of them had quasi-supreme martial arts, and there were many more for them to choose from. The 6 of them were so happy that they couldn't close their mouths. Then they prepared to stay here and cultivate, while Yixian sent his clone to bring his family and friends over. He still left some heaven and earth treasures, which were enough for them to cultivate. By the time these heaven and earth treasures were used up, Yixian might have gotten more. After all, as long as Yixian was here, they wouldn't have to worry about cultivation resources. Within a few days, Yixian's clone arrived with a group of people. The clone and the original body merged again, and their realms soared. Then Yixian taught the 10,000 divine thoughts technique to control the general's tomb to Yichong and Jiang Xinyan. The 10,000 divine thoughts technique was a special martial art that allowed the user to multitask. It was similar to the 8 Baron Wind formation, but it was much more powerful. It could be used to control the general's tomb's construction mechanisms, but most importantly, it could be used to control the 10 deputy generals and the 3,000 Wolf Fang cavalry. Now Yixian had some free time, so he stayed here for a while and got engaged with Guan Yulan. As for getting married, Yixian felt that it would be better to wait until he became a supreme. This would be a big motivation for him. Song Suijing and Guan Yulan didn't have any objections. A man naturally had to prioritize his career. Moreover, Yixian had a clone here to accompany them. Half a month later, Yixian's original body left. Now he had another mission, which was to find the ghost sect and eliminate them. If it wasn't for the help of the Wolf Fang general's remnant consciousness, he would probably be dead. Therefore, he had to fulfill the Wolf Fang general's wish. At this time he had already passed through the desert of death. It wasn't that he didn't have any clues. When the 4 great clans came, Jiang Tianjin was among the Shangguan clan's troops. Therefore, Yi Xian went to the Shangguan clan to find out what was going on. The Shangguan clan is in the heavenly vast city. Yi Xian found out the location of the Shangguan clan from Qinghua and immediately rushed over. With 40% of the great emperor's will sealed, he was very fast. In less than 2 days, he arrived at the heavenly vast city. However, he had also heard that the Nether Ghost sect was like a rat running across the street in the Sunflame Holy Dynasty. The Shangguan clan must have covered up the matter very well. It wouldn't be easy to investigate. The Ghost sect needs a large amount of great emperor's will to spread across the 10 heavenly prisons. They must have a big figure behind them. It seems that they will send the great emperor's will to a certain place regularly. Yi Xian arrived at the heavenly vast city, thinking as he looked for the Shangguan clan. However, along the way he heard some things. For example, there were cases of experts going missing in the heavenly vast city. Many of them went missing, including Void God Realm emperors and Void God Realm kings. Yi Xian knew that the Shangguan clan must have done it. In order to cover up, they even killed Void God Realm kings. Previously, the 9th Heaven Sword God had given Jiang Tianjin the 3rd stage Great Emperor's will, allowing him to break through to the 3rd stage Great Emperor realm. Yi Xian's clone had personally questioned the 9th Heaven Sword God, who was only a 5th stage Great Emperor. However, the 9th Heaven Sword God didn't know the truth. He had obtained the Ghost Lantern by chance when he was traveling in the Sunflame Holy Dynasty. Yi Xian didn't suspect anything. After all, the 9th Heaven Sword God was only a 5th stage Great Emperor. Any member of the Ghost sect could kill him instantly. Forget it. Let's not think about it anymore. Even the Shangguan clan's patriarch is dead. What's there to be afraid of? Yi Xian didn't think about it anymore. He took out the Wolf Fang sword and walked towards the Shangguan clan. The Wolf Fang sword was the Wolf Fang general's sword. Although it was a quasi-supreme divine weapon like the spiritual rhino sword, its quality was much better. Yi Xian walked straight towards the Shangguan clan. Before he got close, a guard at the entrance shouted, "Who goes there?" The guard was shocked because he couldn't sense Yi Xian's aura. This meant that Yi Xian should be a half-step supreme being. Moreover, Yi Xian was holding a weapon. It seemed like he was here to seek revenge. "I want to see your patriarch." Yi Xian didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. You wait. Chapter 756. In fact, the Shangguan family's patriarch had already passed away. These 2 guards were only tasked to guard the entrance of the Shangguan family. Their status wasn't high, so they didn't know that the Shangguan family's patriarch wasn't in the Shangguan family. Soon, the guard who left came back with another person. Yi Xian sensed the aura of a half-step supreme being. However, he estimated that the person was only at 20%, so there was nothing to be afraid of. "I'm Shangguan Xiong. May I ask who you are?" When the middle-aged man saw the weapon in Yi Xian's hand, he was also very wary. "Shangguan Xiong. What's your relationship with Shangguan Lai?" Yi Xian looked at him and asked. "Shangguan Lai is my elder brother." Shangguan Xiong replied. "I see." Yi Xian nodded. Then, he strode forward and slapped Shangguan Xiong's shoulder. At the same time he shouted, "Come with me." Shangguan Xiong was shocked. He knew that Yi Xian wasn't weak, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. "Sir, you dare to fight in the vast sky city?" Shangguan Xiong asked in horror. "He with my great emperors will seal to 40%. No one in the vast sky city is my match." Yi Xian said softly, "Seal to 40% with great emperor's will." Shangguan Xiong's body trembled. One had to know that the strongest person in the Shangguan family could only seal to 35%. However, this young man Yi Xian managed to seal to 40%. He definitely had a strong background. Such an expert was enough to slaughter the current Shangguan family. After all, the family patriarch Shangguan Lai and a few other experts weren't in the Shangguan family. "Okay, I'll go with you," Shangguan Xiong replied. "Forget it. I'll stay in your Shangguan family." Yi Xian suddenly changed his mind and said, "Bring me in. If you do anything, you'll die in my hands." Okay, Shangguan Xiong wasn't strong enough, so he could only compromise. He glanced at the 2 8th Order Great Emperor guards and said, "You 2 continue to guard the door. Pretend that nothing happened." Yes, The two guards immediately nodded. They were scared to death. How could an expert with 40% of great emperors will come to the vast sky city? After that, Shangguan Xiong led Yixian into the Shangguan family's house. On the way, Shangguan Xiong met some people from the Shangguan family, but Shangguan Xiong explained Yixian's identity as a friend. Soon he brought Yixian to his study. Very good. As long as you cooperate, your Shangguan clan will be fine. Yixian nodded in satisfaction. Although the Wolf-Fang general had put away his sword with his realm, he could still kill Shangguan Xiong in one move. Sir, what do you want to do? Shangguan Xiong immediately asked. There was no one around, so Yixian didn't need to pretend anymore. He went straight to the point and asked, what's the relationship between the Shangguan clan and the ghost sect? Boom! This question was like a blow to Shangguan Xiong's mind, blowing him up. How did Yixian know that the Shangguan family was related to the ghost cult? Your Excellency, what are you talking about? How could my Shangguan family? Shangguan Xiong immediately quibbled. Don't deny it. Since I dared to come here, I'm 100% sure. Yixian snorted. If I find out that you're lying, I'll kill you immediately. After that, I'll slaughter the Shangguan clan and leave in a swagger. Gulp. Shangguan Xiong swallowed his saliva. After pondering for a while, he answered, the Shangguan clan is a division of the ghost cult. When he saw that Yixian wasn't joking, he had no choice but to compromise. After all, there were thousands of people in the Shangguan clan. Yixian could kill him and the two guards at the door. With Yixian's realm, he could kill without spilling blood or leaving behind a corpse. The Shangguan clan would disappear without a trace. Very good. The disappearance of the high-level empty god realm Great Emperor in Heaven Vast City should be related to the Shangguan clan, right? Where did you send the ghost lanterns? Yixian asked again. Every month, the ghost cult will send a special envoy to patrol and collect the ghost lanterns. Shangguan Xiong answered honestly. When will the ghost cult's special envoy come again? Yixian continued to ask. Tonight. Shangguan Xiong answered without hesitation. Tonight. Yixian narrowed his eyes and asked for more details. The ghost cult's special envoy had a special identity. His combat power was at 40% and his whereabouts were uncertain. Tonight, Shangguan Xiong would arrive outside Heaven Vast City and hand the items to the ghost cult special envoy. The Shangguan clan was just a division of the ghost cult. Since they didn't know where the branch was, Yixian had to follow the ghost cult special envoy. Coincidentally, the ghost cult would occasionally come to recruit geniuses. Yixian could impersonate the special envoy since his realm was higher than the special envoys. However, just in case, Yixian asked Shangguan Xiong about the other divisions. He didn't want Shangguan Xiong to reveal the truth and cut off his trail. Shangguan Xiong didn't agree at first. If the special envoy discovered something strange about Yixian, the Shangguan clan would be implicated. However, if he didn't agree, Yixian would slaughter the Shangguan clan on the spot. Therefore, he could only compromise. Soon night fell. Shangguan Xiong brought Yixian to the designated location outside Heaven Vast City. Don't give yourself away. Otherwise, I'll have to kill both of you, Yixian reminded again. Yes. Shangguan Xiong didn't dare to object. The lives of the entire Shangguan clan were in his hands. There was no moon tonight. It was pitch black. Yixian and Shangguan Xiong stood under a tree and waited. Before long, a black figure flew over. Shangguan Xiong and Yixian were on guard at first. When Shangguan Xiong saw the other party's face, he relaxed. Greetings, Lord Special Envoy. Shangguan Xiong hurriedly bowed and greeted him. The special envoy was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He wore a black cloak. Who is this? The special envoy of the Nether sect asked directly after he approached. This is a genius of the Shangguan clan. He has just sealed his body with 20% of the Great Emperor's will, so he wants to. Shangguan Xiong hurriedly explained. Oh, give me the item. The special envoy understood his meaning and didn't ask further. He only came here to collect items every month. He didn't know much about the Shangguan clan. Shangguan Xiong hurriedly took off an interspatial ring and handed it over. Yixian had checked this interspatial ring before. There was nothing strange in it, only 100 nether lanterns. Very good. Kid, follow me. The special envoy of the Nether sect turned and left without another word. Yixian glanced at Shangguan and followed him. After Yixian disappeared from his sight, Shangguan heaved a sigh of relief. What he wanted to do now was to return to the Shangguan clan. If Yixian's matter was exposed, the Shangguan clan would be implicated. They would have to migrate secretly. However, just as he was about to return to Heaven Vast City, someone had stopped him. Chapter 757. Gotcha! Suddenly, a crisp sound rang in Shangguan's ears. He stopped in his tracks and immediately shouted, "Who is it?" However, the person blocking the way did not speak and continued to charge forward. Swish! The person blocking the way was very fast. He instantly chopped off Shangguan's head without any hesitation. The person blocking the way was actually not a human. He was the deputy saber general that Yixian had taken out from the devouring system when Shangguan was not paying attention. The deputy saber general's strength was comparable to an expert who had sealed 30% of his body with great emperor will. With a quasi-supreme divine weapon in his hand, it was not a problem for him to kill Shangguan. Yixian had cultivated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. He had left a remnant consciousness in the deputy saber general's body to control him. Not only that, but the two gatekeepers of the Shangguan clan had also disappeared. After dealing with Shangguan, the deputy saber general quickly left and returned to the general's tomb. Yixian's clone was guarding the general's tomb. Since the devouring system of the main body and the clone were connected, the main body could still retrieve the deputy saber general after the clone put it away. Is he dead? Yixian, who was following the Nether Sex envoy, suddenly had a gleam in his eyes. At this moment, the Nether Sex envoy suddenly turned around and asked, "Kid, how old are you?" 22. Yixian replied without thinking. The Nether Sex envoy paused for a moment and muttered, 22 years old, and you have sealed 20% of your body with great emperor will. Not bad. Upon hearing this, Yixian felt helpless. However, compared to the true geniuses of the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty, his aptitude was indeed not worth mentioning. "Lord Envoy, where are we going?" asked Yixian. "Back to the 6th Heaven prison," replied the Nether Sex envoy casually. This answer gave Yixian a fright. The Nether Sex branch was in the 6th Heaven prison? However, he felt that it was normal. There were many experts in the Heaven prison. It was very suitable for collecting great emperor will. Unfortunately, even if he killed a half-step supreme being, he could only collect the peak great emperor will at most. Jiang Tianjin's physique seal 40%. He must have consumed a lot of peak will. Yixian shuddered inwardly. To create Jiang Tianjin, one would need to kill at least 10,000 peak great emperors and half-step supremes. No wonder the ghost church was wanted by the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty. 2 days later, Yixian arrived at one of the entrances to Heaven Prison number 6 with the Nether Cult's envoy. Entering the Heavenly Prison didn't require anything, but leaving the Heavenly Prison required green luck. However, the 6th Heaven's prison was of a much higher level than the 10th Heaven's prison that Yixian had been in before. The twin fruits that could only be exchanged for with purple providence were worthless here. After all, the main fighting force of the 6th Heaven prison was a half-step supremacy. After Yixian followed the Ghost Cult's envoy into Sky Prison number 6, he traveled for another 2 days and finally arrived at a mountain range. "Lord Envoy, how strong is our branch leader?" Before entering the mountain range, Yixian could not help but ask. "Body seal 50%. The Ghost Cult's envoy replied casually. Body seal 50%. This was 2 realms higher than Yixian. However, Yixian had always challenged those with higher realms, so he was not afraid at all. After many twists and turns, Yixian finally arrived at the Ghost Cult's branch. As soon as he entered, he felt several powerful auras. At least a half-step supremacy with Emperor will sealed 40%. Yixian's eyes flickered. At this time, a Ghost Cult's expert suddenly flew over. "He's a genius I brought back from the hall. 22 years old, 20% physique seal." The Ghost Cult's envoy replied casually. 20% physique seal? Not bad. What's your name? The Ghost Cult's expert asked. Yixian. Yixian answered instinctively. This answer surprised the Ghost Cult's envoy. He asked, "Isn't your surname Shangguan?" After being reminded by the Ghost Cult's envoy, Yixian realized that he had given himself away. However, since the ghost cult's branch was here, there was no need for him to hide anymore. He immediately took out the Wolffang sword. Swish! The ghost cult's expert's head flew into the air. It was an instant kill. You! The ghost cult's envoy who brought Yixian here was stunned. His companion, who had also sealed 30% of his physique seal, was killed by Yixian in an instant. It was only then that he realized that he had fallen into a trap and brought an expert here. It's over. Thank you. Yixian grinned. With a sweep of his sword, the ghost cult's envoy's head flew into the air. The two of them died silently. No one in the ghost cult's branch noticed it. However, since his aura had been exposed, someone might come over. Dragon-patterned golden armor appear. Yixian took out the dragon-patterned golden armor. Although he was very strong, the dragon-patterned golden armor's defense was very high. It would greatly increase his chances of survival. At this moment he was like an unkillable cockroach. How could the dragon-patterned golden armor, which could withstand the supreme tribulation, be destroyed by a mere 50% physique seal expert? Yixian immediately charged in. The people in the ghost cult's branch were not to be trifled with, so Yixian did not hold back. In an instant, a bloodbath broke out in the ghost cult's branch. Those people only saw a flash of golden light, but they could not see who it was. There were hundreds of people in the ghost cult's branch. They usually went out in groups to hunt others. At this moment there were about 200 people in the branch. Yixian killed everyone he saw. His cultivation base was also continuously increasing. B****, who's the impudent one? A deafening roar sounded. Yixian turned around and saw a 40% physique seal expert of the ghost cult rushing toward him. How dare a mere 40% physique seal expert shout in front of me? Yixian directly slashed his sword towards this expert of the ghost cult. Quasi-supreme martial technique, firmament splitter. Rip! The ghost cult expert did not have time to react. Moreover, the weapon in his hand was not a quasi-supreme divine weapon, so he was cut in half. Swish! Another 40% body seal expert flew over. He directly slashed out with his sword and landed on Yixian's body. Clang! Yixian staggered, but he was unscathed. The dragon-patterned golden armor was not an ordinary item. It was probably tougher than Yixian's Wolffang sword. You're courting death. Firmament splitter. Yixian slashed his sword and cut his opponent in half. No one in the same realm could take a hit from him. Even the branch leader would not last more than 3 rounds. Who are you? Just as Yixian killed the second nether spirit cult expert, the branch leader finally appeared. Yixian turned around and looked at the branch leader. You're the branch leader? Yixian asked. That's right. The branch leader was stunned. When he saw the dragon-patterned golden armor on Yixian, he suddenly remembered something and exclaimed, The dragon-patterned golden armor? I didn't expect you to recognize it. Chapter 758. I didn't expect you to recognize it. Yixian was rather shocked. The Nether sect was a force from 1,000 years ago. The Wolffang general had once suppressed them, so the Nether sect had some understanding of the Wolffang general. Back then, the Wolffang general had worn this dragon-patterned golden armor to kill the experts of the Nether sect. After hearing Yixian's confirmation, the branch leader revealed a greedy expression. If the Wolffang general hadn't had this dragon-patterned golden armor, he would have died at least 100 times. I can get the Wolffang general's dragon-patterned golden armor after killing you. The branch leader couldn't help but say. Oh? How do you want to kill me? Yixian was very curious. The dragon-patterned golden armor is indestructible. I can't kill you with a sword. The branch leader put away the quasi-supreme divine weapon in his hand and charged forward. Since the dragon-patterned golden armor was indestructible, he could only use his fist techniques to kill Yixian through the dragon-patterned golden armor. When the branch leader leaped down, he launched a barrage of punches at Yixian. His fists were like meteors crashing down on Yixian. Firmament splitter. Yixian also held the Wolffang sword in his hand and attacked continuously. The branch leader's fist techniques were passable, but compared to Yixian's, they were too weak. Round after round slashes struck the branch leader, forcing him to dodge. The Nether sect was able to rise again without being wiped out by the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty's imperial family. You must have a backer, right? Yixian asked as he attacked. If he wanted to, he could actually kill the branch leader in an instant. However, if he did so, his clues would be cut off. The Wolf Fang general's last wish was to destroy the entire Nether sect, not just a branch. Haha, kid. Are you trying to find out about the background of the Nether sect? The branch leader laughed loudly. So what if I am? Yixian replied. Defeat me and I'll tell you. As soon as the branch leader finished speaking, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. Whoosh! Hiss! A circular chop cut off half of his body, but this chop was very accurate. The branch leader would not die for a while. What? The branch leader of the ghost cult was shocked. He could feel that Yixian's cultivation was 2 levels lower than his, but Yixian could easily kill him. Where did this person come from? I'll give you 3 seconds. Yixian arrived in front of the branch leader, his voice cold. Half of the branch leader's body had been chopped off. If he wasn't treated as soon as possible, he would most likely die. Faced with the powerful Yixian, he hesitated for a moment before he slowly said, My ghost cult. Swish! Suddenly, another piercing sound rang out. Half of the branch leader's head was cut off, and he died instantly. Who? Yixian was shocked. He turned his head to look and saw a man wearing silver-white battle armor and a white cloak standing in the air. Damn the Nether sect. The armored man said coldly. Yixian subconsciously put away the branch leader's interspatial ring, then asked, You don't seem to be from the Nether sect. That's right, I'm not. The armored man nodded. I'm the Vice City Lord of Tianfeng City. Then what do you want from killing my hostage? Yixian narrowed his eyes and asked. So what if I killed him? What can you do to me? The armored man sneered. Yixian paused for a moment then asked, You're the one behind the Nether sect, right? The armored man laughed again and charged at Yixian. Just now, the Nether sect branch leader wanted to speak, but he was killed by the Vice City Lord of Tianfeng City. Therefore, the Vice City Lord of Tianfeng City must be hiding something. More importantly, why would he appear here so coincidentally? I already have a clue. I'll kill you first. Yixian ignored everything and immediately burned his true qi to attack the armored man. Firmament Fissure. Berserk Dragon Fist. Boom! The armored man's will had reached 60%, which was 20% higher than Yixian's. His attack power was not to be underestimated. Fortunately, Yixian was no longer the same as before. Their full strength attacks were about the same. However, Yixian had an additional quasi-supreme divine weapon. This was because the other party knew that he could only use martial arts like fists and palm techniques to injure him. Boom! 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 The 2 men's true qi was quickly consumed. Yixian ran wildly on the ground, while the armored man burned his true qi to move around in the air. For a moment the 2 were evenly matched. Yixian, who was wearing the dragon-patterned golden armor, had an amazing defense. Coupled with the bloodline of the divine tree of life, he was an unkillable cockroach. Unless his opponent could shatter his heart or head with a single punch, he would never die. Unfortunately, his opponent was unable to do so. If I kill him, I'll probably break through again. Yixian thought of his opponent's identity. In the next moment he burned half of his true qi. Wolf Fang General's ultimate skill, Wolf Fang Charge. Yixian held the Wolf Fang sword in his hand and fiercely stabbed at the armored man. A giant wolf head condensed from true energy flew towards the armored man. The wolf head opened its mouth wide and bit down on the armored man in an instant. The armored man was shocked. He had heard of this move before. It was an extremely difficult martial art to deal with. However, Yixian's realm was too far apart. He could still break free. Explode! The silver-white armor on the man's body suddenly exploded. Countless fragments shot out, bursting open the giant wolf's head. An ordinary person would have been bitten in half by the giant wolf head. However, the armored man was able to defeat it. He was indeed strong. However, when he reacted, he realized that Yixian had disappeared. Whoosh! An ear-piercing sound pierced through the air. It turned out that Yixian had used the profound meaning of ground shrink to appear below the armored man. Then, he used the firmament splitter. The armored man's body was split in half by the firmament splitter. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me when you're only at 60% of your body seal? Yixian couldn't help but mock when he saw the two halves of the armored man's body falling from the sky. The trip to the general's tomb had greatly increased his strength. Even his confidence had increased by several folds. It was just a 4-level battle. It was easy. After the battle, Yixian quickly rushed over and took his opponent's interspatial ring. Ding! The host has broken through. The current Great Emperor's body seal is at 45%. His realm had indeed increased. At the same time, Yixian also received a large amount of luck from his opponent. It was at least 200,000 points. The sixth heaven prison, Tianfeng City, was one of the 3 main cities. Although the armored man was the vice city lord, it was unlikely that he was the sect leader of the Nether Spirit sect. Therefore, there must be someone behind him. Yes, he is indeed the vice city lord of Tianfeng City. He's even an earl. As expected, the Tianfeng City lord is covering for the Nether Spirit sect and allowing them to do whatever they want in his territory. Chapter 759. Before heading to Heavenly Opulent City, Yixian had to deal with the Nether sect members that he had missed. Then, he left the mountain range and rushed to Heavenly Opulent City. At this moment, Yixian had a rough idea of the background of the Nether sect. He guessed that it was a high-ranking official in the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty. In fact, he did not want to provoke the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty, but in order to fulfill the Wolfang General's last wish, he had no choice but to do so. He rushed at full speed and spent 2 days to reach Heavenly Opulent City. At the same time, he heard that the Heavenly Opulent City Lord was an expert who had sealed 65% of his body with the Great Emperor's will. The Vice City Lord had sealed 60% of his body with the Great Emperor's will, but he was killed by him. The City Lord was only 1 realm higher than him, so Yixian could kill him now. After all, he had also made a breakthrough. Since he wanted to make a scene, he would make it bigger. He first went in to exchange all his luck for heavenly treasures. Then he prepared to start a massacre. Golden Dragon Patterned Armor. Yixian summoned the Golden Dragon Patterned Armor in a secluded place. The armor had a visor so he could see others, but others could not see his face. City Lord Mansion. Yixian, who was wearing the golden armor, looked majestic as he charged toward the City Lord Mansion. His appearance attracted many people, but when they knew that Yixian was going to the City Lord Mansion, they were all shocked. Heavenly Opulent City was one of the 3 main cities of the 6th Heaven Prison. Those who dared to make a move here were simply courting death. You Nether sect members, come out and die. Yixian stood in front of the City Lord Mansion and shouted. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked. Wasn't the Nether sect wanted by the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty? Why would they be in the City Lord Mansion? Not long after, a group of City Lord Mansion guards rushed out. When the leader saw Yixian, who was holding the Wolfang sword, he shouted, "How dare you make a fuss outside the City Lord Mansion? Take him down!" In an instant, 10 half-step supreme beings charged toward Yixian. The lot of you might not be related to the Netherworld cult at all, but you can only blame yourselves for following the wrong person. Yixian's eyes flickered as he suddenly drew his sword. Rip! 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 In the blink of an eye, all the guards were killed. Their interspatial rings flew to Yixian. This person really dares to attack. Run! The surrounding crowd panicked. They had not expected Yixian to actually dare to make a move here. Yixian couldn't be bothered with them. He directly threw out a corpse from his yin and yang ring. It was the corpse of the Heavenly Abundance City's Vice City Lord. The onlookers who had fled to the distance were shocked. They recognized the Vice City Lord and were immediately frightened. How dare you? How dare he kill an official of the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty? He must be a spy of the Raging Flame Sacred Dynasty. Attack together. A group of experts rushed out from the City Lord Mansion. The Sunflame Sacred Dynasty was adjacent to many other sacred dynasties. Each of the heavenly prisons had a different target. The 10th heavenly prison was against the Great Yuan Sacred Dynasty, while the 6th heavenly prison was against the Raging Flame Sacred Dynasty. Yixian looked at the dozen experts and smiled disdainfully. Among the dozen of them, none of them had reached 60% of their Great Emperor will. This was simply a gift for him. Round Skyfisher. Die! Yixian turned into a god of slaughter. His methods were ruthless as he killed the experts one by one. This scene made the surrounding crowd feel as if the end of the world had arrived. Those powerful consecrators of the City Lord Mansion were actually unable to resist in front of this golden-armored man. Who was this person? Could it be that what the consecrator said was true? That Yi Xian was a spy of the Raging Flame Sacred Dynasty? Then, he used the Netherworld cult as an excuse to massacre the City Lord Mansion? However, none of the onlookers died. Therefore, they began to suspect that the City Lord Mansion was really colluding with the Netherworld cult. As for Yi Xian, he was an assassin sent by the Raging Flame Sacred Dynasty to clean them up. At this moment, a few figures flashed out of the City Lord Mansion. The one leading them was a fat middle-aged man in luxurious clothes. "Brat, how dare you be so presumptuous in my place?" The middle-aged man opened his eyes wide. It was hard to imagine that he was the City Lord of Tianfeng City. "You colluded with the Netherworld cult. Today I'm here to take your head." Yi Xian replied coldly. "What a joke. I'm a count of the Raging Flame Sacred Dynasty. How could I have anything to do with the Netherworld cult?" The middle-aged man's heart trembled as he hurriedly said, "No matter what you say, you must die today." As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, he attacked the middle-aged man. "How dare you? Kill him!" the middle-aged man shouted. He took out a huge golden blade and shattered Yi Xian's round sky fisher. Beside him, there were 6 experts with 50% to 60% of their great emperor will sealed. However, he did not recognize Yi Xian's dragon-patterned golden armor. Boom! Shockwaves rolled out. At this moment, Yi Xian had already let go of his hand. However, he did not kill the City Lord of Tianfeng City for the time being. This was his next clue. The 6 peak consecrators of the City Lord Mansion attacked Yi Xian. They all had quasi-supreme divine weapons, but Yi Xian was too fast for them to catch up. Round Sky Fisher. Wolf Fang Rush. Yi Xian showed no mercy. In less than 5 seconds, the 6 consecrators of the City Lord Mansion fell one after another. The middle-aged man was stunned. The 7 of them besieged Yi Xian, but they could only catch a glimpse of Yi Xian's afterimages. Even he could not catch up to Yi Xian. How were they going to fight? This person's movement technique is amazing. Let's go. The middle-aged man made a prompt decision and retreated into the City Lord Mansion. Yi Xian had already collected the 6 consecrators' interspatial rings and charged into the City Lord Mansion. "City Lord of Tianfeng City, if you don't have any life-saving methods, then please die." Yi Xian shouted and slashed his sword at the middle-aged man. "Humph, you are too naive. Blessing of fate." Suddenly, a golden token appeared in the City Lord's left hand. In the next moment his strength surged. What? Yi Xian's eyes flickered. He realized that the purple fate above the City Lord's head had dimmed a little. This fate could be used in this way? His eyes narrowed as he realized that the token in the City Lord's hand was an Earl token. Boom! With the blessing of the City Lord's fate, the City Lord blocked the sword. What kind of technique is this? Seems to be very powerful. Yi Xian was a little envious. He felt that the City Lord's current strength was comparable to an expert who had sealed 70% of his emperor's will. "Brat, you forced me to consume my fate to kill you. This is your honor." The City Lord of Tianfeng City shouted. Actually, he did not want to reveal this move. Furthermore, it was not easy to refine fate. Every bit that was consumed was still a bit. Therefore, this was his trump card. Is that so? Yi Xian's lips curled up slightly. Facing the City Lord's sword, he could only slash out a spatial rend. Pung! The Wolf Fang sword had only been nurtured for a short period of time. Therefore, Yi Xian's move was defeated by the City Lord. The City Lord's slash flew over and landed on Yi Xian's body. Chapter 760. Gotcha! Although there was a crisp sound, Yi Xian's dragon-patterned golden armor wasn't damaged at all. Yi Xian was only injured from the impact and recovered in the blink of an eye. What? This is impossible? The Celestial Abundance City Lord was shocked. His sword was so powerful. How could it not break through the opponent's armor? Quasi-Paragon divine weapons were extremely tough, but the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty didn't have the technology to forge an armor that was as tough as a Quasi-Paragon divine weapon. After all, it was too big. The Celestial Abundance City Lord stared at Yi Xian and looked at the patterns on Yi Xian's armor. He suddenly thought of something and exclaimed, "Dragon-patterned golden armor. It's actually the ancient Saint Dynasty's Wolfang General's dragon-patterned golden armor. At least you are knowledgeable. Humph. I would like to see how long your luck can last." Yi Xian coldly snorted, then charged over again. Damn it. Retreat. The Celestial Abundance City Lord knew how tough the dragon-patterned golden armor was. It was known as the toughest item under the Supreme Being realm. Ordinary slashes wouldn't be able to shatter it. Furthermore, the Celestial Abundance City Lord didn't know any fist-type martial arts and couldn't kill Yi Xian through the dragon-patterned golden armor. If this continued, he would definitely be the one to die. You want to leave? Not so easy. Yi Xian sprinted on the ground. His speed wasn't any slower than the Celestial Abundance City Lord. Yi Xian, who had an almost unlimited amount of qi, attacked the figure in the sky crazily. Firmament Fissure. Firmament Fissure. Wolfang Rush. His attack speed was very fast and accurate. The Celestial Abundance City Lord couldn't dodge and could only use his luck to defend. Purple-blue sign in just a minute. The luck above the Celestial Abundance City Lord's head fell to cyan, and it was about to be used up. His luck was no ordinary luck. It had been refined, and only refined luck could be used to support him in battle. Haha, you seem to have used up all your trump cards. Die. Yi Xian laughed. He estimated that the other party could at most block 3 more attacks before his luck was depleted. Damn it. Bastard, don't force me. The City Lord of Heavenly Abundance City shouted. So what if I force you? Do you still have a trump card? Yi Xian sneered. Since you want to die, then don't blame me. The Heavenly Abundance City Lord roared loudly. In fact, he didn't want the dragon-patterned golden armor. Once he got it, he would have to hand it over to the Sunflame Sacred Dynasty. If he wanted to kill Yi Xian, he would have to pay a heavy price. The Blessing of Providence was not his true trump card. After making up his mind, he took out a white stone and activated it with his true qi. Not long after, an illusory figure appeared beside him. It was an elder. Tianfeng, why did you call me? The old man said. Grandfather, save me. The Heavenly Opulent City Lord hurriedly shouted. Yi Xian paused in his steps. He did not understand how the old man had appeared. Did he run out from that stone? When the old man heard this, he turned his head to look at Yi Xian and said in shock, Dragon-patterned golden armor? Grandfather, this is the dragon-patterned golden armor. This guy wants to kill me with the defense of the dragon-patterned golden armor. My blessing of providence has been depleted. The Heavenly Abundance City Lord hurriedly said. Dragon-patterned golden armor. The old man's eyes flickered with greed. At the same time, Yi Xian looked at him with fear. He felt that the old man was not simple. The two of them looked at each other for a while and suddenly attacked. Firmament Fissure. Great Compassion Palm. Boom. Yi Xian's Firmament Fissure was instantly shattered by the old man's True Qi hand. The True Qi hand was extremely fast and directly covered Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood in disbelief. The old man had severely injured him with a single palm strike. He couldn't fight against the old man. Although it's just an illusion, it's not something I can fight against. Let's go. Yi Xian immediately used the profound meaning of ground shrink and escaped into the ground. However, the old man could sense his aura. Kid, leave your life here. The old man crazily attacked in a direction while Yi Xian dodged in a very sorry state. Fortunately, the soil in the heavenly prison could cover most of the aura. The old man couldn't constantly detect Yi Xian. He escaped far away. Chase! The old man pointed in a direction and shouted. The Heavenly Abundance City Lord immediately gave chase. The old man's projection couldn't be too far away from the white ball in his hand, so he had to follow. At this moment underground, Yi Xian spat out blood as he escaped. This old man is just a projection, but his strength is so strong. Fortunately, it's not his original body. Otherwise, I would be dead. He secretly rejoiced. At the same time, he understood that the projection had a time limit and couldn't last forever. As long as he hid for a while, the Heavenly Abundance City Lord would definitely be killed by him. Grandfather, how long can your projection last? While chasing after Yixian, the Heavenly Abundance City Lord couldn't help but ask, "This is the life-saving talisman I gave you. It can last for 3 minutes." The old man replied, "Then, if that person doesn't die in 3 minutes?" The Heavenly Abundance City Lord was shocked. "I'm helping the 7th prince now and can't leave. However, I already have an expert on his way," the old man slowly said. Although the old man said so, the Heavenly Abundance City Lord was still anxious. Could the expert arrive in time? If he couldn't, then his City Lord's mansion would probably be destroyed. "This kid killed the Vice City Lord and already knows about me. He definitely can't live," the Heavenly Abundance City Lord continued. The old man slightly froze and nodded. "Don't worry, I will kill him in 3 minutes." The two of them chased after Yixian while discussing. Yixian would occasionally be hit by the old man, but his injuries were quickly healed by the Tree of